Evening, and welcome to the July 17th, 2023 meeting of the Lake Oswego Development Review Commission. Administrator Kluge, would you please call the roll of commissioners present?
Chair Arthur,
Here.
Poinsett,
Here.
Sangre,
Here.
Bates,
Here.
Leek,
Here.
O'Connor.
Here. Thank you very much. We have a quorum and our meeting will now come to order. I expect that Commissioner Dews will be joining us as the meeting progresses. But as suggested to me by Planner Hasty, I did want to take a moment to introduce and reintroduce our commissioners as we're starting our next operational year on the DRC. And I wanted to take a moment to welcome our returning commissioners in no particular order. And among our continuing commissioners who are returning tonight are Commissioner Dwight Sangre, and for those in the public who don't know, Commissioner Sangre is a consulting engineer who has spent decades working in the engineering design and management of technology companies, and also in professional education as a teacher and academic administrator. He's very active in the community on a number of fronts, including having served as a director and former president of the Mountain Park Homeowners Association. And I should say, I haven't cleared any of this with any of the commissioners, so it may or may not be correct, but it was my understanding. So we're glad to have Commissioner Sangre returning. Bruce Poinsett is also a returning commissioner. Commissioner Poinsett has extensive experience in safety engineering and as a loss control and safety consultant. He regularly provides professional and college training courses for employee certification and training on a variety of accident reduction issues and regulatory compliance. And Bruce is active in the community, including as a member of Rotary. So great to have you with us. And Commissioner Dews, who is not yet joining us this evening, is an architect. He served for decades as the regional development manager for a large national merchandise retailer, for which he's responsible for understanding and obtaining federal, state, and city approvals, including from time to time public referenda for development of new retail business sites. I also want to welcome our new commissioners, and I'm very pleased to have you joining us this evening. Among our new commissioners is Russ O'Connor. Commissioner O'Connor has worked for decades as a senior project manager regarding high-tech design and construction contracts for a major American manufacturer of semiconductor computer chips. He's also very active in the community, and he has served as a director and as president of the Mountain Park Master Homeowners Association. So welcome. Thank you. We also have with us Commissioner Helen Leek. And Commissioner Leek has decades of experience as a real estate agent and has also served as president of a homeowners association here in Lake Oswego. And she recently completed her service on the Lake Oswego Planning Commission and Commission for Citizen Involvement, which she chaired. So welcome, Helen, nice to have you. And Kristen Bates also joins us for her first meeting tonight as a commissioner. Commissioner Bates is a commercial real estate, land use, and real property development attorney with significant experience in wireless communications facilities leasing. And she also has an active record of community service. And it's great to have another lawyer on board. Thank you. So we welcome our returning and new commissioners, and thank you all for your dedication and service to our community. Our next item of business is approval of the draft minutes of the June 21st, 2023 meeting. I'll ask you if there are any changes, and then we'll take a vote. You can vote yes to approve, no, or abstain, whichever is, in your view, most appropriate. A draft of the June 21st, 2023 minutes was circulated in advance. Many of us on the commission have had a chance to look at the draft. I did have one change that I wanted to make on page 2, where it refers to that I had served on the Planning Commission when LU 180024 came before them. And that should be DRC. I was on the Development Review Commission. I did previously serve on the Planning Commission when some of these standards and overlays were approved for Lake Grove.
Really quickly, sorry for the interruption, Chair. We only have 3 DRC commissioners who can vote on these minutes, so we don't actually have a quorum for
Well,
those.
no,
Oh, sorry.
all commissioners are eligible to vote on administrative approval of the minutes, whether you were at the meeting or not. If you would vote based upon what evidence you find persuasive, and it could be the recommendation or the findings of the other commissioners who in fact were present. That may be sufficient. And you also have familiarity with the minute-taking capabilities of our staff, so.
As a point of order, and that's a good point you raise, Planner Hasty, do we have to then have 4 votes to approve the minutes?
Or there's only 1 minutes.
4 commissioners voting in favor of approval of the minutes?
No, all commissioners are eligible to vote. So-
Suppose we have 3 abstaining. Do we have to have 4 votes to approve the minutes?
Yes, you would, because that you need a majority of those present,
Okay.
and everybody's eligible to vote.
Very good. Are there other changes to the minutes? Commissioner Sangri, did you have a change? Very good. I move then to approve the minutes as amended. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Poinsett, seconds. We'll take a voice vote. All in favor, again, our options will be yes, no, or abstain. All in favor of approving the minutes, please say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Any noes? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
So the motion passed 4 to 1. 5 to 1. Okay. I'll have to work on my math. Our next matter for tonight's meeting is a continuation of the public hearing for LU 22-0059. Just as a reminder, this is an application by Habitat for Humanity of Portland for a number of items: a development review permit to construct 23 townhouses, a minor variance to reduce the required rear yard setback from 25 to 20 feet for 4 units, D16 to D23, modification of LU 18-0024, which previously approved the 23-lot subdivision, to decrease the mitigation tree planting size and also to decrease the shrub planting size. A major variance to reduce minimum landscape planting sizes from 2 gallon to 1 gallon for shrubs and from 3-inch caliper to 1.5-inch caliper for trees, and removal of 5 trees for development purposes. Again, this site is located at 16858 Boones Ferry Road. And our staff coordinator is Planner Ellen Davis, Associate Planner. As you will recall, the hearing on this project was continued from a hearing we held where we received oral testimony on June 21st, 2023. And we continued it to allow additional written testimony. Written testimony was due no later than 5 p.m. on Wednesday, July 5th, and written rebuttal to new testimony as received by July 5th was due by 5 p.m. on July 11th. No new testimony or evidence is permitted during the rebuttal period or tonight's hearing. And as we go into the hearing, I'd like to ask Deputy City Attorney Boone to lead us into the hearing, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is, as the Chair indicated, a continuation of the prior meeting, so I want to go ahead and ask the commissioners to please declare if you had any ex parte contacts since the last meeting or since your attendance. If you have any bias and any financial conflicts of interest to declare. And for new commissioners, please indicate whether you've reviewed the record, in which case you would be eligible to participate in tonight's discussion and deliberation, or whether you have not reviewed the record. So with that, Commissioner Leek.
Thank you, Mr. Boone. I have not had any ex parte contacts, including site visits. I have no biases, and I have no financial conflicts. I have reviewed the record. I've watched the last meeting, and I feel capable of joining into the discussion and decision.
Thank you. Commissioner Poinsett.
My name is Bruce Poinsett. I'm a construction safety consultant. Have not made any prior visits, had no ex parte contact, no interest. That's it.
Okay.
My name is Dwight Sangre. I'm a retired professional civil engineer. Although I did not attend the June 21 first hearing session, I am planning to vote tonight. I'm going to base that on the fact that I have reviewed all of the information that was distributed and is in the public record. I also have watched the proceedings, the film of the proceedings of June 21st, and I have no questions that I would ask based on that. So I feel that I'm fully aware of the information. I do have a couple of disclosures that are important. One is that I have a long history of working with Habitat for Humanity on projects both in the United States and internationally. The second of these disclosures is that I know Ken Sandblast. He and I have worked together in a very constructive way at Mountain Park Homeowners Association, and I have a high regard for his work and for him as an individual. Having said all of that, I am quite prepared to vote objectively on this project. I'm aware of the site. I have not visited the site, and I have had no ex parte contacts with anyone regarding this project.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Randy Arthur. I'm a civil litigation attorney with the Portland office of Bullivan Hauser Bailey. I have no financial bias. I've had no ex parte contacts. I did not make a site visit. And it is my recollection that I was on the DRC when LU 18-0024 came before us in 2019. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Russ O'Connor. I'm a construction project manager.
Mr. Connor, would you make sure your microphone red button is active?
There it goes. Is that better? I'll start over. My name is Russ O'Connor. I'm a construction project manager. I have no financial conflicts, no ex parte contact, and no bias. Although this is my first meeting, I did look through the video and read through the documentation, but at this point, I'm planning to abstain from voting on this.
Thank you. Commissioner Bates.
My name is Kristen Bates. I'm a real estate attorney. I have no disclosures. I have no ex parte contact, no financial interest in this matter, no biases, and no interest. I've reviewed the record, but did not attend the meeting of the 21st, so my intention is to abstain at this point in time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any objection to the commissioners who will be considering the matter tonight? Hearing none. As the chair indicated, this is a continuation. We had for written material only, we had the new evidence period ending on July 5. We had the rebuttal evidence ending on July 11. Rebuttal evidence is limited to evidence responding to issues raised in the new evidence period. Staff has identified one exhibit G588, which we believe at least portions of that are outside of the scope of the new evidence that was submitted. And Ellen Davis will review that. Following that would be a commission. We would ask if any other interested persons wish to bring forward any objections to the rebuttal evidence being outside the scope of the new evidence. So we'll get to that in just one moment. I do want the commission, however, to rule on the request for continuance in Exhibit G574 by Dan Fulton. And I quote, he requests a continuance, quote, until such time that all concerns have been addressed. He didn't indicate any other reasons. And of course, as the commission is aware, these applications are subject to review completion within 120 days from the date of completeness, or any extensions that have been granted, been a 2-week extension been granted. And that must include any application time or any review time before the council if an appeal is filed. So with staff's recommendation, I think we would suggest you deny the request for continuance on the stated basis.
Could you refresh my understanding of our procedure and ruling on this request for continuance? That is, how should we proceed?
Well, you have the written statement by
Yes.
Exhibit 574 on the stated basis. It is in Commission's discretion whether to grant the continuance. I think you need to keep in mind, of course, that the applicant has, all parties have an interest in getting a decision made, and we have a statutory obligation to make a decision within the 120. So balancing that and what would have to occur if you were to grant a continuance, you'll have to make that decision.
The wording of the request in 574 seemed to be rather open-ended. If one is to continue until all concerns are addressed of all people. Is my observation. Do you disagree? Am I misreading that?
No, that's the quote from that. And ultimately, it's the Commission's job to determine whether or not all applicable concerns are addressed pursuant to the code. So that's what the purpose of deliberation is for.
Very good. I will entertain a motion if someone wishes to make a motion on whether to grant the continuance or not to grant the continuance as requested.
I make a motion to not grant the continuance.
I'll second that motion.
Is there discussion?
I think I just second that.
Yes. Is there any discussion? I am sympathetic to requests for continuance. However, an open-ended request is simply not practical. Let's call the roll on the motion, please.
Arthur?
Just for clarification, if we're voting yes, we're voting not to grant the continuance. So I'm voting yes.
Sorry. Poinsett?
Yes.
Sangre?
Yes.
Bates? Leek?
Yes.
O'Connor?
Turn on your mics.
As I understand it, the motion is passed with a vote of 4 in favor of declining the request for continuance. The next issue, I believe, relates to an evidentiary matter.
Yes, as I indicated, staff received all the communication that was during the new evidence and rebuttal period, and staff has issued a memorandum dated July 14th on Friday and sent that out to the commission. It's available online. Associate Planner Davis is prepared to go through that memorandum if you wish, but we also want to then deal with Exhibit G588 on the rebuttal evidence and what portions of that should be considered for striking in the record as being outside the rebuttal.
Are there any standards or further explanation you wish to provide as we listen and view the exhibit?
As to the exhibit, the question is whether it responds to issues that were raised in the new evidence period or whether it in fact is raising new issues, okay, or presenting new evidence relative to those new issues. So,
thank you. Planner?
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Ellen Davis. I'm an Associate Planner for the city, and I'm going to start out with just a brief summary of the discussion in the memorandum that was sent out on Friday. Just a refresher. So staff is recommending approval of the development review permit to construct 23 townhouses. Staff is recommending approval of a minor variance to reduce the required rear yard setback. Staff is recommending approval for the modification of the planting sizes in the major variance for the planting sizes 2-gallon shrubs to 1-gallon shrubs, 3-inch calipers to 1.5-inch calipers for the 8 trees requested to be the 1.5-inch size. And staff is recommending approval for the major variance for 1-gallon shrubs within Tract C. That's the tract that holds the preponderance of trees to remain on the site. I'll also note that originally the application included removal of 5 trees. However, 3 of those trees have been withdrawn throughout various exhibits to date. So staff recommends approval under exception B for the 2 trees that are remaining on the request to remove. So I just wanted to get that all out there. But then let's dive into Exhibit G588. So the applicant objects to Exhibit G588, which was submitted during the rebuttal period prior to 5 p.m. on July 11th. And I'll go through these individual pages, hopefully pretty quickly, that appear to contain new evidence rather than rebuttal of the new testimony that was submitted prior to 5 p.m. on July 5th. So this is page 3. There's an aerial in the background, which is an image of northern Portland, and discussion of other sites developed by the applicant in other jurisdictions. This is not rebuttal. Staff recommends striking that full page. Page 4, also new photographs and text does not appear to rebut any new testimony received prior to that deadline. Pages 5 through 8 are all pictures of other locations in other cities, not rebutting any of the new evidence. Page 9 contains some new information, does not appear to rebut any specific submittal during that new testimony period. Page 11, it's really just the picture on the right is new and does not appear to be rebutting any specific evidence during the new testimony period. So it would just be this picture, not the entire slide, that would be struck potentially. On page 14, there is a new picture and a potential age of the tree. Those are both new evidences that does not appear to rebut any specific item from the new testimony period. Page 5 is the same as page 14, although there's also a paragraph at the bottom that I've highlighted that's talking about all habitat for humanity projects. Again, that is not on the record, which was really specific to this specific project in the past. On page 17, there was no new testimony arguing specifically that the site is not an entry point. So staff recommends striking this entire slide as it contains new pictures and evidence that does not appear to rebut any testimony to the opposite. And then this last one, page 18, similarly does not rebut any new testimony that was submitted during that new testimony period. So just to wrap that up, staff recommends striking pages 3 through 9 in their entirety, a picture, the picture on the right from page 11, photographs and speculative trees ages from pages 14 and 15, and also discussion of all of the applicant's other projects on page 15, and then the whole page for pages 17 and 18. So that is staff's recommendation.
And the next step, I think, the applicant wanted to strike the entire exhibit, so I would call the applicant forward if you wish to provide any additional argument on Exhibit 588.
The red light's on. Oh, good, it's working. Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Lee Armstrong. I'm the project manager for Habitat for Humanity for this development. Nice to see some of you again. I agree with Planner Davis's conclusions about which slides should be struck from the record, with one addition. The last sentence on slide 2, I believe, should be struck as it contains new testimony. And if any of the new testimony is allowed to remain in the record, Habitat requests that we be given an opportunity during this proceeding to rebut that.
Excuse me, what is specifically your request for rebuttal? As to what specifically?
As to the contentions in the new testimony.
You're saying if any of it is ruled admissible, you want a continuance, or?
I don't want a continuance. I can rebut it right here.
Okay. Well, thank you for your enthusiasm.
I believe that this, to be, for the record, slide 2, the last sentence says, but these slides show, Habitat's history shows, that in their view, there is never, capitalized, a reasonable alternative to taking out trees. That's the sentence that you think should also be stricken.
I do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, I would call Courtney Blomer, if you wish to speak to whether or not these portions of your exhibit are found in the new evidence portion of the record.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you.
Good evening.
Okay, let's see. So I will just start out by saying I'm not a lawyer. I am just a concerned citizen. And I think throughout this process, I've expressed consistently how important our trees are, but more importantly, the opportunity that we have.
I'm going to interrupt. I mean, this is an evidentiary question and not a time to argue the merits of the case. So if you could, the question is whether the pages that were identified and the portions of the pages
Yes, I have all of that.
are
Yep.
responding to where they are in the new evidence portion
Okay,
that you're responding to.
we will cut to the chase.
Otherwise, I would have to open it up for other argument. That's all I
Totally,
wanna do.
okay, I apologize. Let's see. Okay, there were a few updates just now. Hopefully I captured them. I'm not sure if I got them all. The applicant objects that pages 3 through 9, 11, and 18, and the photos appearing on pages 14, 15, and 17 of the comment I submitted on July 12th, 2023, comment G588 should be struck from the record because they are new evidence. The statements on pages 3 through 9 and 11 and page 18 regarding the applicant's reckless disregard of trees and green space is not new and it is relevant. The statements that the applicant is reckless as to trees and green space is not new evidence because it is also found in pages 3 through 4, comments G568, the third sentence, G550, sentences 8 through 9, and I would agree the photos on these slides
Can you guys hear back there now? Can you hear now? Okay.
Hello? Okay.
Okay, please proceed. Sorry about
Okay,
that.
thank you. Pages 5 through 9, I agree that this is new evidence. Page 11, the background image of the trees on the site is new evidence. Page 18 is supported by exhibits G 513, sentences 2 and 3. G 552, paragraph 2, sentences 1 and 2. And I agree that the photo is new evidence.
All right, so let's go through those one by one, all right? Because we're going to need to bring up the evidence to see what you're talking about for the commission. So the first one was exhibit G 568. And I think you said it was the third sentence? And that supports the evidence of what?
Let's see, pages 3 and 4.
Pages 3 and 4 of your slide deck.
It supports the reckless approach to trees and the environment. It's not, it's a overarching concept.
Okay, so So this rebuts that statement? Is that what you said?
My understanding was that I needed to show that somewhere already in the record before July 5th, when the open comments were closed,
Yeah.
that the sentiment of my slide was already captured by someone in their testimony.
Well, rebuttal evidence is to rebut evidence that's in the new written materials. So it has to be both in the new written materials, the issue has to be in the new written materials, and your new submittal in the rebuttal period is to rebut that. Okay, that's what I'm trying to understand, is how that rebuts it.
Okay. Well, I could make this easier.
Because,
for
let me,
all of
by
us.
example,
Yeah.
you could put in a record a statement that you agree with, okay? And then in the rebuttal period, also make a statement that you agree with on that again. You're sort of piling on. So the purpose of rebuttal is not to amplify evidence, but to disagree with that evidence. So that's why
Okay, I
I was wanting to
understand.
clear.
I think I did look through a lot of rebuttal submissions, maybe all of them, and many of them, as you say, pile on to topics they've already stated. And so I understood that to be.
Right, but the applicant has responded to those also in the new evidence part, or, applicant submitted stuff during the new evidence. So I think we concluded that was rebuttal to the applicant's new evidence. Okay. So I don't, again, I pose the question back to what evidence does this rebut? Okay.
So I think what I'm
I think so.
finding is that maybe my understanding of how to support those claims with previous testimony might not be what you're looking for. And so I would suggest that perhaps I will agree this is new. I have all sorts of evidence, but a lot of it is the same idea. It's the
supportive.
same support of
Right.
the general sentiment in these slides.
Okay.
So if that's not acceptable, that's fine. We could just talk about a few slides that I think maybe it's not as abstract, if that's the right word.
Okay. Well, to the commission, then, as the purpose of rebuttal evidence is to rebut. And so I don't know if you want to vote from the commission on those. You've indicated the items that you thought, the pages 3 through 9, et cetera, should be stricken, and let's kind of focus in then on the items that should be rebutted, okay, that you're rebutting.
I'm sorry, I thought you were talking to the commission.
Well, does the commission
So-
want to vote on these pages and narrow it down, or?
Well, just,
The concept of rebuttal is important to the applicant, to Ms. Blomer here.
so just refresh us on what was due by July 5th. Was that an opportunity to allow new written testimony?
Yes, July 5 allowed anybody to submit anything.
And then
Okay.
the rebuttal, which was due by July 11th, was for the applicant to rebut
Was for
anything new.
anyone
Oh, anyone.
could submit evidence to rebut evidence that was submitted during the new evidence period. So it is for,
Okay. Thank you.
again, let me just read it here when I bring it up.
Thank you.
I can make the argument or whatever. Let's see. An opportunity shall, let's see, no, that's the other, that's the whole thing. Any participant may file a written request with the city for an opportunity to respond to new evidence submitted during the period the record was left open. During that period, any person may submit written testimony raising new issues that relate to the new evidence, testimony, or evidence for decision-making which will apply to the matter at issue. But it is for rebuttal purposes in which be left open for somebody may submit to respond to the new evidence submitted during the period. So it's a response to the new evidence, not additional new evidence. Okay.
After,
sympathetic with that.
after, in this case, July 5th at 5 p.m.
After July 5th. Yeah. And that's 500703 411 sub 2.
So at this point, as I understand it, the applicant has objected to this exhibit. I believe it's, is it 588? G588 in its entirety. Staff has come back and made recommendations, as I recall, about what staff believed should be stricken from the exhibit, but not the entire exhibit.
Right, and I think we just heard from the applicant indicating that they agreed with staff not to strike the
In
entire
some
exhibit,
instances, yeah.
but added the one sentence on slide 2.
I see.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Ms. Blomer is trying to show how her testimony responds in rebuttal to that, to the new evidence.
And were there points that are being objected to that you were conceding? I wasn't sure. It sounded like you were on some point saying, this is new evidence, if I heard you correctly.
You did hear me correctly. I will concede a few of these things that seem a little bit less direct in terms of how I'm able to support them. So I accept that. That's fine. There are some pages where I do think.
It's difficult for us to, for me personally, to understand exactly what you're conceding and so on, and it gets a bit muddled.
Yes,
Do you have a clear, succinct way of saying what points you're conceding on the objection?
Would it be helpful to have Ellen's PowerPoint, Planner Davis's
Yes, I thought we
PowerPoint?
were going to do
Okay.
that.
I think that's the easiest way, and we can just.
Thank you.
That's G588.
I've asked the proponent of the exhibit to identify with more specificity what she is conceding as to the objection.
Okay. I will concede this slide. Number 4, this slide. These slides, 5, 6, 7, and 8.
You're conceding 5, 6, 7, and 8?
Yep, and I believe there was an objection to slide 9, which I will also concede.
Okay, so 3 through 9, you've conceded.
Thank you. And then page 11, I will concede that image is new evidence. And okay, so this is a page that I would like to spend a little more time with. The statement, if that's considered new evidence and is inadmissible, then it could just say tree 2144. It's just the title of the page at that point, which is fine. I think the other argument or the issue that the applicant had was that the image was new evidence. And I'd like to challenge that because it is just a photo of the trees, and I have a lot of almost exactly the same photos are available on this, the staff site.
Yeah, we concede that, but the question is, what does this photo of these 2 trees rebut in the new evidence? I mean, I think the argument is these are co-dominant trees. I mean,
Right.
This is a photo of 2 trees, or other photos of these 2 trees in the record.
I think it's just a reference point for the point, but if the visual is not needed, the visual is not needed.
Okay.
I think I was just thinking of it that simply, is that it's a way to explain the tree situation.
The tree.
But if
pick the
everyone's
trees in
familiar
question.
with the trees, then a photo would not be necessary.
Okay.
Was there anything else you were conceding? I didn't know if you were at the end of your statement of
Oh,
concessions.
sorry. So
I'm not inviting you to concede anything else. I'm just for clarity and moving our meeting forward. Are you finished? Do you have more you want to talk about?
No, I'm fine. We
Okay.
can move forward. Same thing here. I would say if that sentence is in question, that could be, I can concede that. The tree photo, same thing as the slide before. This new information about that last paragraph, I didn't see that as an objection before, for some reason.
Right, no, that is new from the staff report.
Oh, that's new from this, I missed that, okay.
That's additional from the staff report.
Let me read it, just a moment, please. Okay, I will concede that. And in this one, I'd like to say the photos could be removed, but the content would remain. It's not new testimony, it's just a statement.
And to what does it rebut? What are you disputing in the new evidence that this takes?
I'm disputing that the applicant has not provided, well, actually, you know what? I missed a lot of what I wanted to talk about. So I'd like to pause here because I think it's a good point. Their definition of what is reasonable is different than the definition that many of us have about what's reasonable for them to determine.
This statement is about an entry point and photos of an entry point. And you're rebutting what evidence that says this is not an entry point? Did the applicant, I mean, somebody
The
argue?
entry point, okay, you're right. I forgot about the entry point part. I thought it was just about preserving and protecting. Okay, I will concede that statement as well. And this one, the photo, I will concede. The quote itself is in response to, well, it's the same topic. I mean, a lot of submissions were about climate change and our responsibility. But if you're saying this is new and that can't be admissible, then I will accept that.
Yeah, I think we all get the point. That was submitted in new evidence to that point. This doesn't seem to be rebutting that
Okay,
point.
all right.
And I think I think then the item was on the sentence on slide 2, the last sentence on slide 2, which was raised by the applicant just now.
Yep, I concede that as well.
Okay.
So I just want to point out, the slides that were not shown here will still be admitted. Is that what I understand? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
With that, we need a ruling from the commission to strike the pages as recommended by staff and conceded by the applicant, or by Ms. Blomer, excuse me.
And updated, yes, by the applicant and conceded.
So we had an objection to the entire exhibit. The city, through its professional staff, made recommendations about what should be admitted and what should not be admitted. The applicant then, as I recall, seemed to accept the city's recommendation with the addition of an additional sentence. The proponent of the exhibit has conceded a number of points. So, Commissioner Sangri, you indicated you had a motion.
Yes, I would like to accept the
Can sorry to interrupt. This whole process is new to me. I obviously have not done a proper rebuttal before. I do have some comments that I prepared for tonight.
And are they relating to the evidentiary question of whether your information submitted on July 12th is rebuttal to new evidence?
Yes. So I would like to, could I please
Not
read
argument
this?
that you could have
Not
submitted earlier.
arguments.
Very good. We do have a lengthy meeting tonight, so please be succinct.
Okay. This is really.
On a point of order, can the witness interrupt us when we're in the middle of discussing a motion?
No. No, you're the, no, you're the chair.
As a matter of procedure, proper procedure.
Right. The question, I think, is whether she has finished her presentation.
And I'd
then the
understood
motion
she
would be in
had, but
order.
she did not leave the desk.
Right.
So you have 1 minute to complete your presentation.
Okay, thank you. I will,
Please go ahead.
that's okay. I don't think a minute's gonna do it, and, but thank you for
Well,
hearing it.
I don't want to shut you down, although,
And I didn't mean to interrupt the procedure. I
No,
didn't mean to
that's-
interrupt you. It's not, this is not
Well,
my
let's-
normal.
Let's hear your thought, if you can conceptualize it briefly, so that you get it on the record, and then we'll proceed with our motion. Thank you.
The rebuttal is about, the photos of trees 2144 and 2145 are relevant because in the rebuttal, the applicant says it wants to cut one of them but save the other. The city staff determined under tree code criteria 2 that cutting one would harm the other. So they both either have to go or they have to stay together. The photos show how close the trees are and they are in the same stand. LOC 5502-080-2, they do not qualify for removal under criteria 2 because removing one would harm the adjacent tree. The photo of tree 2139 is relevant to my point about how mature and large this tree is, and that because it provides great water retention capability, it is essential to the site. The applicant argues that there is no reasonable alternative to cutting the tree, but because the tree is so large and provides so much water retention capability, it is more reasonable to preserve the tree and after the building plans or not build Unit 8. The photo shows how large it is and how much water retention the tree would provide. In conclusion, the material on, well, I think we already covered all of the other things. That was important to me. Thank you for hearing.
Well, I
me.
appreciate you taking the time to be here and working so hard to present this evidence and this evidentiary point, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Commissioner Sangri, you were about to make a motion, or you were in the process of making it?
Yeah, I would like to move that with respect to Exhibit G 588, that we accept that exhibit with the recommendation, all of the recommendations from staff that have been conceded by, or in this hearing, and again, but retain the remainder of that exhibit. I will move that.
I second.
Does your motion take into account that last sentence on the last slide?
Yes, it does. That's slide 18, or are you referring to slide 2?
Slide 2.
Slide 2, thank you.
Yeah, for slide 2, yes, I do specifically include the recommendations from staff on slide 2.
Very good. Motion by Commissioner Sangri, second by Commissioner Leek. Is there any discussion? Then let's call the roll on the pending motion.
Arthur,
Yes.
Poinsett,
Yes.
Sangri,
Yes.
Boones,
Yes.
Bates,
Abstain.
Leek,
Yes.
O'Connor.
Abstain.
I believe the motion passed. That evidentiary matter is resolved.
Right, and before we call for any other objections around rebuttal, I see Commissioner Dews has joined us. And Commissioner Dews, I asked for any declarations of ex parte contact, bias, or financial interest. Any ex parte contact since the last meeting?
No.
Okay, and you were at the last meeting, so we don't
Yes.
need to go through that.
Yes.
And no bias, no financial conflict of interest.
No.
All right.
Just being here very late.
Okay. All right. No problem. Is there any other rebuttal evidence a person wishes to raise as being outside the scope of rebuttal? Hearing none, then Ellen, let's see, I think you want to go ahead with sort of a summary of materials, or?
I did summarize the materials
Okay.
earlier on at the very beginning, but I can go back there real quick. Maybe, if I
No,
can.
maybe not. I mean, if you're done, you're done.
Okay, I already summarized at the
Okay.
very beginning.
All right, then we've resolved the evidentiary issues, Mr. Chair. Then I think we're ready to move to deliberation.
Oh, very good. I thought we might have more from professional staff.
If you wish to ask questions of staff, feel free.
I believe there was I was just looking for it, but not rapidly enough. In the third memo from staff dated July 14th, 2023, there was a discussion of competing expert reports on a certain point, and I'm just looking for that now. Is that something that planning staff has any more they wish to add to that, to illuminate the issue for us.
There were multiple moments that, or submittals that included references to professionals. One that comes to my mind as staff is that, if you'll recall from our last hearing, that there were 2 trees proposed for removal, trees 2144 and 2145. At that time, staff had recommended that if tree 2144, the larger dominant tree, were removed, that tree 2145 should also be removed. The applicant's arborist did submit additional testimony and evidence that that smaller tree can be retained even after the removal of tree 2144. So staff's in consultation with our contract arborist has deferred to the applicant's professional in that matter, saying that they can retain tree 2145 even with the removal of 2144 due to the canopy and its vitality, and as long as the stump, I believe they're recommending the stump be ground in place or not extracted in a way that would harm the root system of the other tree. So they did have some mitigation measures that they were proposing in order to meet criterion 2 and retain tree 2145, but remove tree 2144.
So as you reported at the commencement of our meeting, there are now simply 2 trees requiring special attention for removal, and staff is in agreement now that that is appropriate under the criteria.
That is correct. A great deal of additional evidence was provided in Exhibit F11, I believe, which included a number of roots from exploratory digging, showing the exact diameters and locations of roots, particularly in the periphery around, I believe it's Unit 8 on the west side of Tract C. And though that evidence does show that there are large supportive structural roots for both tree 2139 and 2144 that do extend into that building foundation. The applicant's arborist discusses some alternatives to removal, such as a pure and grade beam foundation system, which is not cut into the dirt in the same way, that could allow tree roots to remain. Unfortunately, for Douglas fir trees, they are not very tolerant of having their root zones covered generally due to the proximity to the trees' bases, their trunks, and how much of their root systems would be covered even in a pure and grade beam system. We do find that those trees would not remain even with an alternative construction technique. So staff does find that exception 3B has been demonstrated to be met by the applicant and staff does recommend approval of the 2 trees, 2139 and 2144.
And as I was reading there, the applicant's July 5th, 2023 submission, with respect to tree 1318, they were proposing what they characterized as a condition of approval on page 4 of that. And is that something the professional staff is in agreement with?
Yes, so I believe that you're referencing, there is a proposal from the applicant. So this slide shows the original site plan as proposed. Oh, no, that's the modified one. Thank you. So this original site plan, you'll note that the blue C exhibits that there's a break in between. There's 3 units and there are 4 units. So the proposal from exhibit F11 is to provide additional space for tree 1318 and actually also to provide additional space for tree 1120 in tract C in the middle of the site for both of those trees to be retained. This modification just slides together those building footprints. Staff has reviewed this proposal and finds that it's substantially compliant with the original proposal, that it does still meet all of the clear and objective standards under the WLG overlay code, that it does continue to meet all of the applicable criteria. Staff does recommend approval, especially if this will aid in the retention of tree 1318, which staff does find significant.
Staff also, as I recall, recommended a reduction in shrub size for track C?
You are correct. The original applicant request, I believe, was for approximately 80 shrubs on the site to be a smaller size in kind of different locations. There is additional evidence submitted in Exhibit F011. Or I believe it's actually, it might be off by a number. It's not, I believe, in the same exhibit as all of the tree discussion. It's one of the other applicant submittals that addresses the major variance criteria specifically, and it discusses the unique physical circumstance of locating larger shrubs sizes within the root zone of trees to remain, and talks about that being a unique physical circumstance for areas where the shrubs are proposed under canopies of trees. Staff finds that the largest number of trees to remain on the site are located within Tract C. That was, as you may recall, Tract C was created in order to retain additional trees on the site during LU 180024. So staff does now recommend that smaller shrub sizes be allowed within this specific area in order to further tree retention and health and minimize disturbance within their root zones.
Thank you. And I think tree 2139 was the subject of discussion, which I understand staff is in agreement, must be removed. Can you show us where that is on one of the slides, 2139?
I can. So that's going to be the tree on the right for me.
Oh, I see.
There we go. So this one is 2139. This one is 2144 for reference. The building footprint is kind of shown right here. And 2139, I'll note, is a very large, it's a 60-inch Douglas fir tree. So a point on the map could be the center of the trunk, but that size, it is quite close to that foundation of that new structure. And also I'll note the applicant does mention that unlike with Unit C, where there is some ability to move building footprints a little closer together to give a little extra breathing room to the trees, in this case, the B units that you see, if I can get this to show up, these B units cannot be shifted because of the location of the private roadway, and this private roadway cannot be realigned. It has to line up with Washington Court across the way. So there's no ability to move around those B units in the same way that they did with the C units.
And as I recall, there was some discussion at the June 21st meeting about a proposed vacation of a right-of-way. Has that issue been resolved at the city council level?
That has not been resolved, and that's still not an item as part of this application and still not under the purview of this body. So staff does still recommend the condition from the staff report so that the plans can meet the setbacks required based on the location of the south property line, however that may be at time of building permit issuance.
To be clear, the council did not approve the vacation and there's nothing pending. It's not like there's something to resolve.
I see. Thank you for that clarification. Before we get into deliberations, do commissioners have other questions of staff?
I do.
Commissioner Leek.
How many plantings in Tract C will there be that will be reduced to the 1 gallon size?
That would involve counting some, there are a number of very specific plantings that are provided on the landscape plans, and the landscape plans are broken down into different sizes of shrubs and grasses, and I am afraid that I do not have an idea off the top of my head because it's not every single plant that they're requesting the reduction for. So I'm afraid that I can't give you an estimate of that number.
But the landscaping at the back portion on the railroad right away, those calibers have not changed.
So there are 4 trees.
Not the trees, the shrubs.
The shrubs, staff is only recommending approval of the shrub size within Tract C.
Okay.
Any other questions of staff? And then let's proceed with deliberations. Commissioners who are voting tonight, what are your thoughts on this application based on the evidence of record? I do appreciate that tree 1318 can be saved, as I understand it.
Yeah.
And I do appreciate the applicant's sensitivity to the concern about the elimination of trees. I did think this was a good project initially when it came before us in 2019. And I think I appreciate the applicant's willingness to work to come up with an alternative to save some of these trees. So if there is a motion to approve with the conditions, I would be supporting the motion. Are there other comments by participating commissioners? Commissioner Leek?
Obviously, I'm new to this party, and I have reviewed the record and gone through the exhibits, and it's personally painful to see two wonderful trees go, but I understand that their removal does meet the criteria set forth by our codes. So I would be in agreement of approving the applicant's work and with the changes and modifications recommended by staff.
Any other deliberations before entertaining a motion? Is there a motion?
And if I may, Mr. Chair, to try to help out the mover. So it would be to approve LU 22-059 as recommended by staff with the addition of the approval of a major variance for planting shrubs of 1 gallon size within tract C and removal of trees 2139 and 2144. The other trees, I think, were not approved for removal, so that's the...
So that proposed motion form encompasses the application and the...
Well, it's the application. Of course, staff recommended a bunch of conditions.
With the conditions.
One of which included no removal of trees. Now our staff is recommending 2139 and 2144. And staff recommended no removal of the shrubs, but now staff is recommending tract C. Okay.
For the reduced size shrubs.
For the reduced size shrubs.
Okay. I would make that motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Is there any further discussion? Then let's call the roll on the pending motion, please.
Arthur?
Yes.
Poinsett?
Yes.
Sangre?
Yes.
Boones?
Yes.
Bates?
Abstain.
Leek?
Yes.
O'Connor?
Abstain.
Motion passes, and motion passes 5-0-2, okay?
Yes.
Okay.
2 abstentions on
Two
LU
abstentions.
22-0059.
And this is a tentative decision by the DRC with written findings brought back to the commission on its next meeting, which is Monday, August 7.
Very good. That concludes our proceedings tonight on LU 22-0059. Thank you very much to everyone who participated, either by providing additional written material and certainly being here and speaking tonight orally. We're now moving to a second public hearing this evening. This is on LU 23-0009. This is a request for a development review permit to construct additions onto an existing duplex in the downtown redevelopment design district, as well as a request for a design variance to reduce the rear yard setback from 10 feet to 7.5 feet. This site, for your information, is located at 580 Fifth Street and 590 Fifth Street. And tonight, staff coordinator is Evan Franstead, who is a senior planner for the city. Welcome. Deputy City Attorney, would you like to lead us into the hearing,
Mr.
please?
Chair. This is a public hearing process will be as follows. First, there'll be a presentation by staff and testimony by the applicant up to 20 minutes. Then testimony by parties in support of the application, followed by testimony by parties opposed to the application, and finally testimony by those neither for nor against the application. Individuals will be allowed up to 5 minutes. Any person in attendance may cede his or her time for testimony to another person, except to the applicant, but in no case shall any person's testimony be increased to greater than 10 minutes. Recognized neighborhood associations, homeowner associations, government or government agencies, or other incorporated public interest organizations will be allowed up to 10 minutes. These time limits do not include time spent responding to questions from the commission, testimony by attorneys, representatives, and witnesses on behalf of which or on which are a part of the presentation by person shall be counted within that person's time limit. It's assumed that persons are testifying on their own behalf unless they expressly identify the recognized neighborhood association, homeowner association, government or government agency, or other incorporated public interest organization they are representing. For persons testifying, there's a little lights on the table. Green means go, yellow means 30 seconds, red means stop. After testimony in favor, opposed, and neither for nor against, then the applicant's rebuttal up to 5 minutes. Then following that would be the commission deliberation, including a statement to the applicant by the commission of any proposed conditions of approval different than contained in the staff report, and the applicant's response to the commission's conditions of approval proposed following commission deliberation. As stated in the public notice, the deadline for submission of written materials was noon today. No written materials may be submitted to the commission tonight. Any person may request an opportunity to present additional evidence by requesting a continuation of the public hearing. This land use request is to be considered based upon the applicable criteria and standards. The staff report lists the criteria that staff identified as applicable to the request. It was available online and from the planning department. Testimony and evidence must be directed towards the applicable criteria. We ask that you specifically identify to the commission the criteria or standards you're addressing so the commission may consider the testimony in relation to the criteria or standards. If you do not identify the criteria or standards you're addressing, the commission is not obliged to guess which standards or criteria you are addressing and testifying about, and may not consider your testimony in its decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the commission and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes raising the issue to the City Council and the Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. The failure of the applicant to raise any constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with specificity to allow the commission to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. A potential conflict of interest declared on behalf of each of the DRC members to the extent of their business or employment, which each will identify. Unless declared otherwise, the respective DRC member does not have a known present or anticipated future business relationship in the project or the applicant. It's possible that a future business relationship could arise in the initiation, design, construction, or maintenance of the project through either the employment or business of the DRC member personally, or through a relative as defined in ORS Chapter 244-020. At this point, I would ask the commission members to please declare if you've had any ex parte contacts, including a site visit, any bias on the application, any financial conflicts of interest, and please state your business or employment. Commissioner Lee.
I am a real estate agent broker in the city of Lake Oswego and have been for 38 years. Also been part of building many homes in the city of Lake Oswego in a past life. I have no ex parte communication, I have no financial interest, and I have no bias.
I'm Bruce Poinsett, construction safety consultant. Have no interest, no bias, no ex parte contact.
Thank you.
I'm Dwight Sangre. I'm a retired civil engineer. I have not visited the site. I have no financial or other relationship to this. I have had no ex parte discussions regarding this project and feel that I have no bias at all.
Thank you, Commissioner Sangre. I'm Randy Arthur. I'm a civil litigation attorney with the Portland office of Bullenhauser Bailey. I have had no ex parte contacts on this application. I've not made a site visit. I have no financial interest and have no disqualifying bias on the application. Thank you. Commissioner O'Connor.
I'm Russ O'Connor. I'm a construction project manager. I have no financial conflicts, no bias, no ex parte contact, and I have not been to the site.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm John Dews. I am an architect, and although I'm familiar with the area, I have not made a specific site visit. I have had no ex parte contacts. I have no bias, nor do I have any financial conflict of interest.
Thank you. Commissioner Bates?
I'm Kristen Bates. I'm a real estate attorney. I have no ex parte contact in this matter. I have no financial interest, and I have no bias.
Thank you. Is there any challenge to Commissioners' right to consider the application? Seeing none, Senior Planner Evan Franstead for the staff report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Boone and members of the commission. My name is Evan Franstead. I'm a senior planner. The application before you is at 580 and 590 Fifth Street. Here's the site. The site is zoned R2 and located within the downtown redevelopment design district. Properties to the north, south, east are also zoned R2 and primarily developed with attached dwellings, either with zero lot line dwellings or duplexes, and there are a few single-family detached dwellings on this street. Properties to the west are located in the R6 zone. Those are developed with detached single-family and duplex dwellings. Here's the existing conditions survey. The site is developed with an existing single-story duplex and carport. The duplex is approximately 1,887 square feet in size. The carport will be removed as part of the project. Here's a site plan. The proposal includes construction of an addition onto the rear of the existing duplex, shown in the hatched area. The plan shows the required setbacks will be met except for the 10-foot rear yard setback along the alley. The applicant is requesting a design variance to the rear yard setback at 7.5 feet. Here are the floor plans. These plans show the proposed addition to the west wall of the existing duplex, the bold black lines of the new walls. The first floor portion of the addition includes two-car garage. The second floor includes the second unit. Here's the south elevation plan that shows the exterior design of the proposed addition with the exterior stairs to the unit on the second floor. The second floor will meet the required 10-foot rear yard setback, while the first floor with the garage is at 7.5 feet. The north elevation shows the addition includes a door to the garage and windows on the second floor. The east elevation on the left is the front facade. The existing structure will remain unchanged on this east portion, with the second floor addition shown in the rear. The west elevation on the right shows the design of the proposed addition from the alley with the two-car garage doors and the entrance for the second unit. The overall height of the duplex is 22.5 feet. This plan is the rear elevation that shows the paint colors and cladding materials. As I mentioned earlier, the property is located in the downtown redevelopment design district. The DRD standards require buildings shall use masonry as predominant building material for walls and along the ground floor. Masonry includes fabricated bricks, blocks, stucco, and glass. Proposed stucco on the ground floor for the new addition is in compliance with the standard. The DRD standards require upper stories include wood and glass as the predominant building materials. The second floor addition includes a combination of horizontal fiber cement board siding with the appearance of vertical wood siding, wood soffits, and glass windows. The DRD standards require roof to use slate, tile, shakes, wood shingles, or synthetic materials that appear like those materials. The applicant is proposing architectural grade shingles with teak color to simulate wood shingles on the entire roof in compliance with the standard. Overall, staff finds the proposal complies with all the DRD standards with recommended conditions. For the design variance to the rear yard setback from 10 feet to 7.5 feet, the first criterion is that compliance with the applicable standard is not practical due to physical characteristics of the site or existing structure. The applicant's narrative discusses that compliance with the rear yard setback is not practical due to the location of the existing dwelling towards the rear. I'll go back to the site plan while I discuss this because it will be easier to understand. So the addition is in the hatched area, as I pointed out before. So they're saying that in order to build the garage on the rear, it's not practical due to the location of the existing dwelling, of the existing duplex. In an effort to keep the portions of the existing duplex, construction of the garage to meet the rear yard setback is not feasible, as would result in demolishing the west load-bearing wall, which would then reduce the floor area of the duplex, creating a cost-prohibitive need for a new load-bearing structure system from roof to foundation. The alley access to the garage is consistent with the placement of garages throughout the neighborhood and generally desired as stated in the first edition Forest Hills neighborhood plan and by the R6 zone immediately to the west that requires garages to be accessed from the alley if available. Staff concurs with the applicant that compliance with the rear yard setback is not practical due to the impacts of the load-bearing west wall and because a garage with an alley access is desirable as part of the purposes, goals, and objectives of the base district. This criterion is met. The second part of the design variance is that the proposed variance will result in a project that is exceptional in quality of detailing, appearance, materials, or creates a positive, unique relationship to other nearby structures, views, or open space. Or, if in the DRD, as in the case here, the variance is necessary to create a complementary relationship with a viable existing structure on a budding lot that is not designed in Lake Oswego style. The applicant's narrative states the proposal creates a positive, unique relationship to the budding structures and is consistent with the pattern of development along the alley and will result in a complementary line of sight along the alley. Staff concurs with the applicant that the proposed addition would be consistent with the pattern of development, which consists of several garages and structures along the rear lot lines, thereby creating a unique positive relationship to those structures and the view corridor along the alley. Overall, staff finds the design criteria are met, and in conclusion, staff recommends approval of LU 23-0009, subject to the conditions listed in the staff report. So that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you, Planner Franstad. Are there questions the commissioners have for our professional staff? Commissioner Leek?
Could you put the floor plan back on there, please? What is the depth of the garage? Oh, there it is. 21.3, 21.3, 21.8. Okay. And which way is west here? Is the garage front, is that west?
That's right, the alley is west.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sangre?
I'm curious about the rationale for the setback variance based on alignment with the other structures, the other garages. When was the 10-foot setback requirement in place, and how is it that all of these others are 7.5 feet or whatever is compatible with this recommendation? Are they just older than the 10-foot setback requirement?
Well, the 10-foot was created with the R2 zone. I'm not sure exactly what year that took place. Maybe Johanna does.
I think it was the early, so a number of the, I would say about midway through the block, that used to be zoned EC. And I can't remember what the rest of that block was zoned. But when the Downtown Redevelopment Design District was created, they created in a buffer of R2. So that block is now R2, but in the RDD zone. And I believe it was with that rezone and adoption of this overlay, that's when the 10-foot setback was created.
Yeah, so this is a grandfathering, if you like, for those other structures.
Yeah, a number of those structures are non-conforming.
Yeah,
Or have gone through
they're
similar.
non-conforming present time.
Yeah, or have gone through design variances, similar to what happened at 520 Fifth Street. You might remember that from was that 4 months ago?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Are there other questions commissioners have of staff before we hear from the applicant? Hearing none, I'd like to invite the applicant's representative and the applicant to come forward if they wish to speak.
Pearson, architect.
Mr. Pearson, would you just wait till your voice can be picked up on the microphone, please?
I'm Clinton
Good
Pearson,
evening.
architect, and I don't know if the owner, she was going to call in on Zoom. I don't know if she's around. Okay, and she has a statement. If it doesn't work, I can read her statement, just in case.
So this is Sally Fuller, the trustee?
Yeah, Sally Fuller, yep.
Ms. Fuller, can you connect with us?
Okay, You should be able to hear me now.
We can hear you.
Oh, okay.
Good evening.
Good evening, commissioners. I'm Sally Fuller, owner of the duplex at 590 Southwest 5th Street, which I purchased back in December of 1988. Not long after that, employment opportunities, or rather the lack thereof in Oregon, led me to join the staff of the National Credit Union Administration with the job title of Financial Institutions Examiner and to relocate to Los Angeles. In the 20 years I worked with NCUA, I saw much of the United States, but I held on to the duplex, intending to eventually retire there. I began work on the plan to remodel the duplex to be my retirement home in July 2021. And the first pre-application conference was in August 2021. So it's been a long project. I can't say it's been easy going the whole way, but we have finally developed a plan that satisfies the various code requirements. At roughly the same time, the planning department made staffing changes and Mr. Franstead was assigned to our project. I found Mr. Franstead's staff report to be extremely clear and comprehensive, and I feel we are on firm ground for going forward. So I am pleased to be here this evening with a plan recommended for approval by Mr. Franstead and other city staff. And I hope you formalize the recommendation with your approval. That said, I'd like to introduce my two project colleagues, project architect Cal Pearson and Todd Hartman, a local development and construction professional, representing me in case I need boots on the ground, as I am currently living in Los Angeles. Thank you for your attention.
Well, thank you very much.
I yield the remainder of my time to my colleagues.
Thank you for participating and for introducing your colleagues. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm Clinton Pearson. My nickname's Cal. I used to work just down the road at Benner Stange Architects for many years, designing shopping centers around the United States. And after that, I worked for an international design build construction company that specialized in cemetery structures. And they had a Canadian, US, and Australian company. So I was privileged to work on very historic places across Canada, the US, Australia, even some in China and South America. I've done a dozen projects, worked on a dozen projects or so in Lake Oswego itself as a sole proprietor. I have three projects under construction right now, 3 remodels mostly. So relative to this project, Evan's, we've been working on this a long time, but Evan did a good job, I think, presenting the issues. Yeah, the main thing is it doesn't make sense to push that up. So it's a duplex, and she wants to turn that duplex into a single unit, and so this is creating another unit. And it doesn't make sense to put it in the front for garages in the front there. And the existing carport is pretty ugly, and it makes sense to put it there. It doesn't make sense to put this other unit above the existing structure because it would just be cost prohibitive to try to support that above that and bring the loads down to new construction, a new foundation, with all that data required. It just makes sense to put it where we've got it. A usable garage, 21 foot 4 or 3 is about the minimum. And so we feel that there are so many other structures on that alley that vary from that 10-foot setback. The one to the north, it's a new structure, and a beautiful, beautiful duplex. And it also, so we're about aligned, we'll be about aligned with that existing structure to the north. There are several other already down that alley on this side, on our side of the alley, that also vary from that. Some significantly, it seemed like 4 or 5 feet setback. So I think what we have makes sense, and I don't think the variance that we're asking for is really too difficult, and it seems like staff is supporting it too. So I don't want to take up your guys' time. I've worked on about almost 30 exhibits for this over, the last year, even for myself. So I think I'll hand it over to you guys to vote on, or have the rebuttal, or somebody else to talk about it. So
thank you.
That's good.
Commissioners, are there questions for the applicant's representatives? Well, thank you very much. Your presentation was very clear and certainly helped me understand a little bit better about the application. Thank you.
Good. All right. Thank you.
I noticed in looking at the public record that I didn't see any written comments. Some may have come in. Is there anyone here tonight who wishes to testify in favor of the application? Very good. Have you given your name to our administrator? Well, please come on up. We appreciate spontaneity. Please identify yourself for the record.
I'm Marilyn Rudin. I was here during the bocce presentation when they wanted the setback way back, and it's really, really tiny now, but that setback must be about 5 inches. I have the duplex on 6th Street, which is just across the alley, and it's a very tight setback. The one that he's talking about on the corner is 7.5 feet, and this one's that he's proposing is 7.5 feet. Sounds perfectly plausible to me. As long as you can put a car into it, that would be great. So I not only own the duplex in back of it, he built my house 24 years ago. He's a very good architect. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony.
Did we get the name for the record?
Are there others wishing to testify either online or in person in favor of the application? Seeing none, any wishing to oppose the application, or do we have any witnesses online or in person who wish to testify in opposition to this application? Seeing none, do we have anyone who wishes to speak, neither for nor against the application, but has something to say? If not, we can proceed.
There'd be rebuttal. I don't know if we'd style.
Does the applicant wish to rebut?
Is there anything in her statement you want to rebut, like you're a good builder? No. Okay. All right. Sorry.
No objections to that.
All right. Prior to closing the public hearing, any person may request an opportunity to present additional evidence. If a request is made, the public hearing will be continued to a date certain, not less than 7 days later, or the record will remain open for at least 7 days after the hearing to enable additional written evidence or testimony to be submitted, and the commission would establish the period for any rebuttal written evidence to be submitted. Is there any such request? Seeing none, unless waived by the applicant, the commission would allow the applicant at least 7 days after the record is closed, all other parties to submit final written arguments in support of the application. This information will be considered part of the record, but would not include any new evidence. So I ask the applicant, do you wish to submit final written argument, which would delay deliberation and decision on the application until the next meeting, or do you wish the commission to proceed based upon the evidence that's been received?
I wish the commission to proceed based on the evidence that you have.
Thank you. May proceed with deliberation, Mr. Chair.
Commissioners, are there any questions about the application of our professional staff? we'll proceed to deliberations. Commissioners, what are your thoughts on the pending application? Or any motions you might have? Commissioner Leek?
It makes sense to me, and it's in keeping with what is already existing there, so I have no problem with it.
Any other comments? Is there a motion?
I will move approval of LU 23-0009 with the recommendations from staff for a design variance to reduce the rear setback from 10 to 7.5 feet.
I second that.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, let's call the roll.
Arthur?
Yes.
Poinsett?
Yes.
Bangry?
Yes.
Dews?
Yes.
Bates?
Yes.
Leek?
Yes.
O'Connor?
Yes.
7-0.
Great, the motion passes.
Tentative decision by the commission, written findings brought back on August 7.
Very good. Well, Ms. Fuller, we hope you can enjoy your new place someday in the future.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
We will now continue with our hearing schedule, and we have a third hearing scheduled for this evening. This is on matter LU 23-0010. This application is a request for approval of a minor development lot line adjustment between tax lots 200 and 300. It includes a three-partial minor partition of adjusted tax lot 200 with the addition or the separation of two flag lots, a resource protection district delineation and buffer averaging, and a major variance to increase the total number of lots served by an access lane from 3 to 6. And finally, the application requests permission for removal of 9 trees for development purposes. City Attorney Boone, would you lead us into the hearing, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is there anybody wishing to testify on this matter who is not present when I reviewed the hearing procedure for the immediately preceding land use hearing? You or not? That is fine. Were you here when I went over the hearing procedure? All right. All right, we'll start from the top. The first, there'll be a presentation by staff, then testimony by the applicant up to 20 minutes, then testimony by parties in support of the application, followed by testimony by parties opposed to the application, and then testimony by those neither for nor against the application. Individuals allowed up to 5 minutes. Any person in attendance may cede his or her time for testimony to another person except to the applicant, and in no case shall a person's testimony be increased to greater than 10 minutes. Recognized neighborhood associations, homeowner associations, government or government agencies, or other incorporated public interest organizations will be allowed up to 10 minutes. The time limits do not include time spent responding to questions from the commission. Testimony by attorneys, representatives, and witnesses on behalf of which part of the presentation by person shall be counted within that person's time limit. It is assumed the person is testifying on their own behalf unless they express identify the recognized neighborhood association, homeowner association, government or government agency, or other incorporated public interest organization they're representing. All testimony, after testimony in favor, opposed, and neither for nor against, and the applicant's rebuttal up to 5 minutes. The clock on the table will count down green go, yellow 30 seconds, red stop. Commission deliberation will then follow, including a statement to the commission by the commission of any proposed condition of approval different than contained in the staff report, and the applicant's response to the commission's conditions of approval proposed following commission deliberation. As stated in public notice, the deadline for submission of written materials was noon today. No written materials may be submitted to the commission tonight. Any person may request an opportunity to present additional evidence by requesting a continuation of the public hearing. The land use request is to be considered based on the applicable criteria and standards, which were listed in the staff report, and they were available online and from the planning department. Testimony and evidence must be directed towards the applicable criteria. We ask you to identify to the commission the criteria or standards you're addressing so the commission may consider your testimony in relation to the criteria or standards. If you do not identify the criteria or standards you're addressing, the commission is not obliged to guess which standards or criteria you're addressing, and the commission may not consider your testimony in its decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the commission and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes raising the issue to the City Council and the Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. The failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with specificity to allow the commission to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Potential conflict of interest declared on behalf of each of the DRC members to the extent of their business or employment, which each will identify. Unless declared otherwise, the respective DRC members not have a known present or anticipated future business relationship with the project or the applicant. It's possible that a future business relationship could arise in the initiation, design, construction, or maintenance of the project through either the employment or business of the DRC member personally or through a relative as defined in ORS 244-020. At this point, I would ask the commission members, please declare if you've had any ex parte contacts, including a site visit, if you have bias on the application, any financial conflicts of interest, and please state your business or employment. Commissioner Leek.
Thank you, Attorney Boone. Helen Leek, Realtor. I have no biases, I have no financial interests, and I have not done a site visit. And what was the other thing?
Ex parte.
Ex parte. I've had no ex parte, except I know where to find these properties in the RMLS.
Thank you, Commissioner Lee. Commissioner Poinsett?
My name is Bruce Poinsett. I'm a construction safety consultant. I have no conflict, no bias, no financial interests. Drove past the site, and that's it.
Thank you. Commissioner Sangri?
I'm Dwight Sangri. I'm a retired civil engineer. I have not visited the site. I have had no ex parte discussions regarding this project. I have no financial relationship and no other bias.
Thank you. I'm Randy Arthur. I'm an of-counsel attorney with the law firm Bullivan Bailey, where I handle commercial contract litigation. I have had no ex parte contacts. I've not made a site visit on this application. I have no financial interest and have no disqualifying bias. Thank you. Commissioner O'Connor.
I am Russ O'Connor, Construction Project Manager. I have no financial conflicts, no ex parte contacts, no bias, and I have not visited the site.
Hi, I'm John Dews. I am an architect. I have not visited the site. I've had no ex parte contacts. I have no financial conflict of interest nor any other biases.
Thank you. Commissioner Bates.
Thank you. I'm Kristen Bates. I'm a real estate attorney. I've had no ex parte contact. I have no financial interest. I have no biases, and I have not made a site visit.
Is there any challenge to Commissioner's right to consider the application? Seeing none, Associate Planner Ellen Davis with a staff report, please.
Good evening again,
Good evening.
Commissioners. My name is still Ellen Davis, and I'm still an Associate Planner for the City of Lake Oswego. This next case, 230010, also contains a number of components, so I'll try to breeze through a lot of these components to try and get to the main part of the public hearing that led us to this public hearing. A major variance is the main reason why we're here, but I'll go through every part of the application just with a brief overview. So the site is located on Goodall Road. That is Hazel Road to the south, and the yellow that you see in the left corner, that is Lake Oswego High School, just to get you oriented to the site's location. The first part of the application is a lot line adjustment. Currently, the tax lots or the lots are configured as shown on the left. The lot line adjustment creates the configuration shown on the right. So throughout tonight, when I say the site, I'm typically referring to this starred portion of the overall property that is owned by the applicant. So the next part of the application is a 3-lot minor partition, creating 2 flag lots. So in this case, Goodall Road is over on the left. Parcel 6 will take access directly from Goodall Road. And the proposal is there is a partition that was already approved on the property to the north. There's an access lane that would then serve parcels 4 and 5 as flag lots. The partition does meet the dimensional standards of the R15 zone. This is located in the R15 zone. So next I'll dive into sensitive lands. The applicant's natural resource consultant has delineated, established the exact boundaries of the sensitive lands resources on the site. Nettle Creek runs through the middle of the site with that stream corridor I've outlined in blue. There is also wetlands associated with the creek on both sides. There's a 50-foot buffer required for the protected riparian area that's identified with those dashed red lines. There is an additional 10-foot construction setback in which no primary structures can be located. So the next piece of the sensitive lands application involves modification to that boundary to create a more square, regular buildable area on parcel 5 by increasing the mitigation in the wetland area on parcel 6. This requirement does involve on-site mitigation, and that on-site mitigation is a required condition recommended by staff. Next part of the application I'm going to talk about is tree removal. There are 3 trees proposed for removal up near Goodall Road. Over here, there's one additional tree that will be removed under a dead tree removal permit that is not subject to this application. These 3 trees up near Goodall Road are located where the pathway is going to be located. The 5 other trees are located in proximity to the access lane extension that is proposed. I'll note that there's a great deal of grading that goes into the construction of this access lane. So that will require the removal of all 5 of these trees. 2 of the trees requested for removal are in poor condition. The other 6, the applicant does not meet the burden of demonstrating that these other 6 trees are not considered significant trees pursuant to our code. Staff therefore reviewed the tree removal as though those 6 trees are significant trees and looked at exception 3B, whether there are reasonable alternatives to tree removal. In this case, the trees that are located near the Goodall roadway need to be removed in order to construct a public pathway. Those pathways are generally located next to the roadway that they're serving in the public right-of-way, so that really reasonably can't be relocated. If it were pushed farther back onto the private site through some sort of private easement, then additional trees would need to be removed. Similarly, with the proposed removal for the extension of the access lane can't shift too much out of its current alignment without creating greater negative impacts on the sensitive lands area and/or removing additional trees. And I will note that this access lane can also help to serve as a fire turnaround due to the length of the access lane. A fire turnaround for a fire truck is required, so this access lane can also help to meet that need for the fire department. So now we'll jump into the main event. This is the major variance request. This is the thing that requires a public hearing about this application. So this present site that we're talking about is lots 4, 5, and 6 on this broader overall project conceptual plan. The major variance is a request for an access lane to serve more than 3 lots. Currently, the code requires that an access lane can serve no more than 3 lots, up to 2 of which can be flag lots. In this case, the proposal is that lots 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and future lot 9 will all be served by this one access lane. The applicants discuss the existing physical hardships that lead to this variance request in their report. The sensitive lands area that we've been talking about essentially bisects the overall site. So you have building areas over along Goodall Road on the west side, and then there is area outside of the sensitive lands over on the east side. The only way to reach that is by an unavoidable crossing to provide utilities and access to the other side of the wetland and stream corridor. If the applicant constructed a public roadway that was 50 feet wide in compliance with our local street standard, then they would not need a major variance. If the applicant constructed 3 separate access lanes, each one serving 3 lots, no more than 2 flag lots, they would not need a major variance. However, the sensitive lands code requires that impacts to sensitive lands be avoided as step 1, minimized to the greatest extent possible, and then any impacts that can't be avoided or minimized have to be mitigated. So in this case, they wouldn't be able to create these other access lanes or this wider public roadway because that would have a greater impact on this sensitive land, and they are able to meet the major variance criteria. Therefore, they essentially have to go for the major variance for the route that has the least impact on the sensitive lands area. In this case, the access lane has a minimum pavement width of 20 feet as opposed to the 50 feet for a public roadway. If the site did not have any sensitive lands on it whatsoever, and they constructed a public roadway, there are conceptual plans provided by the applicant that show this site developing into 12 to 16 lots, as opposed to the 9 lots shown before you. The proposed access lane will have it is the minimum variance necessary in order to provide access and utilities to the 5 lots proposed on the east side of the sensitive lands area. And staff finds that they will not have a undue impact on the neighborhood, as the neighborhood does already have a pattern of development that predates the current code regulations limiting the access lane to serving 3 lots. So there are 2 properties to the south or developments to the south that serve up to 5 lots with an access lane. There's also a site up to the north that serves 9 lots with a private street, i.e. an access lane. So this isn't out of character for the neighborhood. Most of the properties along Goodall Road the houses are set farther back from the roadway and or served by an access lane in a similar manner that is proposed with the proposed development. So staff does recommend approval of this major variance request. And that is the conclusion of my presentation. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions, Commissioners? Commissioner Drews?
Yeah, the 2 other examples that you showed of those, do you know the width of those roadways?
I do know that the 2 to the south, they are 20-foot access lanes, the same way.
So similar to what the, okay.
Yes, exactly. The one to the north, I don't know off the top of my head. There are a couple of those lots are developed in Clackamas County, and I do just happen to know off the top of my head for the 2 developments to the south, since I've reviewed building permits on those access lanes.
Okay. Also, in terms of the mitigation for the trees, it's a 2-to-1 ratio for the 6 significant trees.
That is correct.
I believe it is. And you call out I think it's a 2-inch caliper, an 8-foot height minimum to start with. What type of follow-up is there over the next few years to make sure that these trees are thriving? How does that work from the city's perspective?
So there are kind of 2 to 3 different sets of mitigation that would apply to this project. So there is sensitive lands mitigation, and that requires a large number of trees and shrubs, native species, selected from Chapter 50's list of native species, which is more restrictive than that found in 55-02-080 or 082 or 084, I forget. So that is one set of mitigation. That set of mitigation will be bonded and re-inspected after 1 year. There is also street trees that need to be planted along Goodall Road. Those need to be inspected prior to occupancy of the first building permit. There are these mitigation trees for these trees requested for removal, and those trees do need to be the larger 2-inch caliper size. They need to be able to achieve a minimum height of 30 foot because they are mitigation for trees removed for creation of a flag lot. So that is specifically in the flag lot code where that requirement comes from. And these mitigation trees can be used to meet the sensitive lands mitigation requirements, which requires a large number of trees. As long as they are large enough species, they are large enough at time of planting, and they can attain a minimum of 30-foot height. So it is not unlikely, especially due to the large number of trees that are going to need to be planted, that the applicant may choose to plant these mitigation trees in the sensitive lands. So typically, the flag lot trees would just be inspected prior to final occupancy of a new dwelling. In this case, because they're fairly likely to be planted in the sensitive lands to also account for sensitive lands mitigation, they're more likely than not also going to be part of that 1-year re-inspection in the bonding period. So it's not over a long period of time. It is just a 1 year, but that is the requirement as it exists in our code.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner O'Connor?
Yes, I had a question about the roadway. I assume that it's still going to be a city road?
No.
It'll be private?
It is going to be a private access. So that's part of the proposal. Early on in the planning phases of this development, the applicant and city staff did look into construction of a public roadway. That is not the most appealing to the city's engineering department due to the large culvert systems and retaining walls that are necessary to create this access and allow it to pass over Nettle Creek. So the city specifically doesn't particularly want to take on ownership of a public roadway that we would have to maintain with a culvert system. So this will be entirely a private access lane, and there will be recorded maintenance agreements and such for all of the lots that are using that access lane to be responsible for the maintenance of that private access lane, including culverts and retaining walls.
Okay, thank you. Just to follow up to that, on that roadway, since it's more narrow, but you still need to get fire trucks and garbage trucks and everything else in there, is there going to be a restricted parking along that roadway?
So there won't be any parking within that 20-foot wide access lane. 20 feet wide is the minimum requirement that the fire code specifies.
Right.
So there will be no parking within that 20 feet. I'm not certain off the top of my head if the fire marshal will require the signs to be posted or if it will just be clear enough that it's not wide enough for you to park your car in the middle of it. But we do post fire lane, no parking signs where necessary.
Yes, it seems like it's not an assumption that most people that are coming for a gathering or something that they can't park in the street. So signage would be preferable.
Certainly.
Thank you for those good questions. Any other questions of staff? Oh, Commissioner Leek?
You don't use a little button system?
We do not.
Oh, well.
We're a little more informal than the Planning Commission.
Oh, okay. Could you put the slide back for where the road goes in and showing the, so the access road is 20 feet wide, but the little branch coming off to the or the road coming down to lot 9, that's also 20 or that's narrower?
So that is an excellent question. So the section that is part of this application between lots 4 and 5 going down to lot 9, that section is 20 feet wide. The easement might be a little bit wider. There are some stormwater facilities that I believe the applicant is trying to capture within that easement area, but the roadway itself is actually a little bit less than 20 feet wide. It might be 16 feet wide with a shoulder, a 4-foot shoulder on one side, I'm actually recalling. The access lane that is on lots 1, 2, and 3, it was already approved as part of a previous land use approval, I believe 2249. That roadway, the applicant has chosen to make a little bit wider, and they are installing retaining walls and a culvert. So for the maintenance and installation of all of those retaining walls and such, it is going to be a little bit wider than the
So it's going to be raised?
It's going to be raised to go over Nettle Creek.
Okay. And will there be curbs, or is this just asphalt to the boundary and then gravel on either side?
There will not be curbs on the portion between lots 4 and 5. That's not a requirement. It will be a gravel shoulder on one side, and I don't believe there will be a curb on the other side. We don't typically see curbs on these access lanes. It is largely up to our engineering department, reviews public improvements. They help us to ensure that all of our utilities, streets, et cetera, meet all of our standard details and requirements within the city.
So all the stormwater is going into the mitigation area?
So there are stormwater planters, I believe it's these gray areas to serve the access lane, and then the overflow or outfall for those stormwater planters would then go into the wetland for recharge.
Okay, and lots 1, 6, 7, 8, where's their storm going?
So this application is really just looking at lots 4, 5, and 6.
Okay.
For lot 6, the public improvements would be the only stormwater we would look at this time. And that would be for the pathway up at the front. And I believe that there is also an outfall that connects to the wetland from that location. I believe there might be some modifications if or when the pathway and stormwater system for lots 7 and 8 come in order for those stormwater systems to tie in a way that best meets the needs as determined by the city and the applicant stormwater engineers. But the house footprint for lots 4, 5, and 6, all of that would need to be submitted with a stormwater report and reviewed at time of building permit application based on the actual impervious surface created with each house.
Okay, may I ask a dumb question? What are the little Ps on 2, 3, 4, 5, 9? What are those little gray Ps things?
I believe that's to show that a parking space could fit within the buildable envelope on each lot, that there could be a parking space to meet the setbacks. We do require 1 parking space per dwelling unit.
Thank you.
Commissioners, do you have other questions at this point? If not, I'd like to invite the applicant through the applicant's representative to come forward, please, if they'd like. Good evening. Would you please state your name and affiliation for the record?
Yeah, my name is Ryan O'Brien. I'm a planning consultant representing the owners, and I've been helping OTAC with this application.
Thank you.
My name is James Kramer, and I'm with OTAC. So I'm a land use planner there. We have a slew of team members from different disciplines at OTAC as well. I believe one might be on the Zoom. Perfect. Kyle Childers, he's the project manager. He also might have some answers for engineering questions that came up. This might be a little over my head.
Great. Well, we appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having us.
Please tell us about the application from your perspective.
I'm just going to say a few comments, and then James is going to take over from there with the PowerPoint presentation. This site has been identified as a potential Street of Dreams site for 2024. So we're anxious to get this project going. I did want to mention one thing about the street widths. I think it was important because there was just discussions about it. We've talked to the engineering department. They really don't want a public street through here. So we have really 0 options to do anything. We don't want but a second access across at the south end, across the property. But if we did do a public street, they wouldn't want retaining walls. We've got 15-foot high retaining walls already. So when you add up the entire width, if you did 2-to-1 slopes, the footprint would be probably 120 to 130 feet, because it's 15 feet on the south side and 10 feet on the north side. And then when you look at the PUEs and everything, it just doesn't work. So that's the reason why we're going with the private option. That's really all I have to say, is that we're really excited about this project. We think it'll be a great amenity for the city. The homes will be fairly expensive, and we've got really nice building envelopes. You can see we dropped the number of units from 16 down to 9. So it's just about the minimum we can do. And we really, with the cost of the street improvements on that first phase, the first 3 lots, you really can't financially make this thing work unless we get the variance and we get those additional lots. And it just basically finishes up the entire piece of property. So we think it'll work out really nicely. Go ahead.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So I had a rather robust PowerPoint to present. However, I think it might be very redundant because I think some of the same actual exhibits were used. So greatly appreciate all that thoroughness. So I might make this a little bit quicker. And additionally, some of the questions that were asked and answered by staff were some of the additional analysis that I had in there. So I might just kind of breeze through it a little bit. I have a couple more exhibits that might help just put some history behind the project as well. So I might just go a little bit quicker.
Okay.
So this was just going to be me introducing some of the team members. Like I said, we have a slew of OTAC representatives. We had landscape architects, myself in land use planning. We had a surveyor as well as our civil engineer. And then of course, we had environmental planners and arborists looking at this as well. We've already done a very thorough explanation of the site, so that's great. I believe these might have been actually read verbatim from maybe this slide whenever it was being introduced. So we know that there are 5 different requests being made. Again, the real meat is request number 4, which is the major variance. That's why we're here today. So I'll just kind of briefly go through. I believe this was actually used by Ellen. So on the left is the existing, and on the right is the proposed lot line adjustments. The subject property, which she starred, would be in red. Then the south property would be in green. And that's going through an alternative, or not an alternative, but a separate application for a minor partition as well. This is the subject property, lots 4, 5, and 6. As mentioned, lots 4 and 5 are flag lots. This exhibit shows pretty in-depth the different floor area ratios, the setbacks, and how they can be accommodated. It's, excuse me, it's zoned R15, and as staff presented, everything meets the lot dimensions and requirements for the R15 zone district, which is great. So it was recommended approval. The third request would have been the RP district delineation and buffer, what I call transfer. So specifically, there's a total of 2,265 square feet identified right there in red, that's squiggled on there. And it's proposed to adjust that and transfer a total of 2,403 square feet to lot 6, which is identified in gold right there. And that equates to an additional 138 square feet of buffer area for this site. The major variance, we were very excited and pleased to see that it was supported by staff. It is to allow the access lane to serve 6 lots as opposed to 3. Specifically, the yellow that's squiggling on there is that access lane that has been previously approved. It does serve lots 2 and 3, and then per code, any lot that is adjacent to an access lane for a flag lot is required to take access, so therefore lot 1 would be required to take access off of that access lane. So that's already the 3 maximum lots that can be permitted. So as such, we are proposing lots 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and future lot 9 to access that existing accessway. When looking at it, these are all the approval criteria that Ellen very thoroughly went through, as well as in the report and the submitted materials. So I'm probably gonna go a little brief over these and just kind of reiterate a lot of what she said. So the physical circumstances are certainly the RP areas and the buffers that are required. As you can see, that takes up a large area of the property. And we really wanted to preserve those, not only for the city, but we also think it's a great amenity for future residents just to have that beautiful atmosphere. And it's also definitely in keeping with the neighborhood. So when looking at that, you can also notice that through this is taken from our surveys, that 25% of the lot, overall lot, that is steep slopes of 12% or greater. So that also kind of creates a bit of a hardship when determining development opportunities. The second approval criteria really refers to making sure that it's in keeping with the neighborhood, and Ellen did a great job at explaining that. We definitely and certainly believe that it does keep in contact with the neighborhood. The narrower road that she was describing definitely visually keeps that as a smaller infraction, maybe you would say, from the neighborhood, as opposed to the larger 50-foot wide. It's been said that engineering wasn't supportive of that as well, so visually that creates a better interest, as well as creating a smaller pavement helps with erosion of the soils as well as drainage runoff, because there's less impervious cover that is just washing away that rainwater that we always get here in the Pacific Northwest. I think this is a very similar, it just has a bit of an aerial of what Ellen showed earlier. The 2 properties to the south both have 5 residential properties on it with a private access lane that's similar to ours, as well as the one on the north. This one just gives a little bit different of a perspective. This one is talking about the fact that one of the biggest issues or criteria is that it's the minimum variance necessary. Ellen did an amazing job at explaining exactly kind of what we hoped that we were presenting in our submittal materials. So I'm just going to kind of present a little bit of the history as she explained. We went through 3 different alternatives. When we first got the property, we looked at it and said, okay, the density allows up to 19 because the overall concept area is that size. So based upon that, you can have a maximum density of 19 units. So we looked at that and we said, oh, well, the 16 one looks great. But then the middle one is what we came up with 12 after we kind of looked a little bit more deep into it and found out that there's a lot of sensitive areas. So we looked at that, and then as you can see kind of in the middle, right here, these 3 lots, those aren't going to be buildable at all. As we said, we really wanted to preserve as much as we can of the sensitive land areas because it's a great amenity, and again, just what the code wants, as well as in keeping with the neighborhood. So that's why we came up with this 9-lot division, which overall concept that is, that really preserves a lot more with the exception of that small transfer of that area. And then there are 9 trees total. 1 doesn't require us to go before, it's the dead tree one, excuse me. So a little bit closer of a view of that would be the 3 from Goodall Road. Again, those are needing to be removed due to the proximity to the walkway. And then this was the best solution for placement of this extension, and that unfortunately does require that 5 additional trees come out. This one looks a little bit further off, but it's because it's, I believe, a little bit larger of a tree in the root system are right here in this grading. So that one would need to be removed as well. So based upon what the staff has recommended, we would really like to see it get approved as conditioned because we think the conditions are very viable, easy. The mitigation was what we were expecting, so we would like to potentially see it get approved as conditioned. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Commissioners, are there questions of the applicant? Commissioner Sangri.
Yeah, you have 2 additions to the PRA, one on Lot 6 and one on Lot 9. And I understand the rationale for that, but what are you going to do to assure that those areas are not encroached with some inappropriate activity by the homeowner? What's going to prevent the homeowner from building a tennis court or whatever in that area?
Well, any permitting of it, like something that substantial wouldn't have to go through the city. So it would obviously be found at that point that it's within that area and it wouldn't be able to be permitted. I think there would need to, I don't have an exact
Well,
answer.
I can answer that question a little bit. The city requires us to prepare a document that needs to be recorded with the plat showing the PRA what the restrictions are, the setbacks, and that you can't develop in those areas unless the city approves it. You'd have to go through the whole, we'd have to come back to this group again to be able to do that.
But this will be part of the city's requirement for approval of those lots.
It's a recorded document, so that it would show up in title reports with all the property owners, so they'll know that that's an area they can't build in.
Yes,
And wouldn't they probably, in the, what's it called, something estates, wouldn't they more than likely will have an HOA with CCNRs and bylaws and neighbors kind of look out for that sort of stuff and they keep their eye on it and if it happens.
Well, the HOA have a lot of control if somebody tries to do something they're not allowed, like taking trees down, and those HOAs are generally managed by management companies now. So it makes it a lot easier.
One this small might not be, but you know, these are going to be $4 and $5, $6 million houses because the value of the land is $1.5 million. So
all the improvements, including the utilities, are all private except for the sanitary sewer main line, but all the water lines, everything are all private. So there's a lot of maintenance involved.
Yeah, I had a little hesitation answering that at the beginning because it is kind of like eyes in the sky. Our neighbors kind of help us out with some of that because I know when I've purchased homes and I am a land use planner, I look at my title work and I have that information and I understand it, but to a typical homeowner, most people don't, and you're in real estate, so you know that happens a lot.
Well, we know in Lake Oswego, you can't get away with anything, right? Is that right?
well, you can, but
Taking trees down and stuff?
because most things in Lake Oswego are only even enforced by complaints.
Yeah.
There has to be a complaint. But in this situation, I don't see that as being an issue.
Well, we have a lot of neighbors that can complain if we do something wrong.
Any other questions of the applicant?
Yeah.
I picked up that you said that the water would be private. Does that mean that they're drilling
Well,
wells?
no, what it is, we're providing the water lines on the public street. You have an individual water line that goes back to each lot.
I mean, from the city.
For city water, so each lot will have a separate water line. I think there's 2-inch water lines that go back to each lot. So the meters are out in the street, but it still has to be maintained. I would assume that the association will have to maintain that because they're grouped in one group.
Very good. Thank you.
Could you give me a little more detail on the elimination of tree 1105, why that's necessary, and what, if any, alternative options were explored?
This tree?
Yeah, that tree there.
So 1105 is really due to the grading change here and the installation of these roads right here. Because it's so close to that, and this has to get graded to create that curve for fire apparatus turnaround, the root system goes a little too far in, and it will compromise it at that point and potentially make it pass. So therefore, it'd be best to take it out at this time.
I see. Okay,
Yeah,
thank
with
you.
development.
Any other questions of the applicant? Thank you very much. We appreciate the
Okay.
information.
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
So at this point, I want to ask if there is anyone either online or in person who wishes to testify in support of the application. And then is there anyone wishing, either online or in person, wishing to testify in opposition to the application? In opposition? Please come forward.
Wait till you get to the microphone. People are watching on TV.
I'm Bill Jarsh. I live at 1485 Timberline Drive. I've lived in the Forest Highlands neighborhood since 1994. I'm very familiar with Goodall.
Good evening.
Yeah, good evening. And this project is probably one of the last, if you're familiar with the neighborhood, probably the largest last undeveloped lots. There were homes there, but most of it's undeveloped, as you can see from the original drawings. So my testimony is about the 3 right-of-way trees on the right-of-way that are alive. There's one that's dead. And I don't know if that's part of the major variance, but I would like, I would request a modification of those to save those. And it has to do with the pathway and the swale in the TSP are for a major neighborhood collector, which should be 8 feet and 6 feet. That's what it is. However, we've had because this neighborhood was not developed with sidewalks originally, and there were homes there already, right? And we're familiar with that. We live in Lake Oswego. There's several conditions under which the city engineer can modify the standards for a major collector or any other local street. And my request would be, since those are big trees, the DBH is between, I think, 18 and 35 inches. They're also they would shade one of the lots there, one of those homes. So that would provide some cooling to the home. There also would be pretty aesthetic. And if you look at the location, they're very close to the edge of that development, basically the swale plus the walkway. My request would be to modify those due to prevailing conditions. There's like 3 conditions that the city engineer can do that for, in order to see if those trees can be saved. In other words, make them much narrower. And I guess my example of where that's been done is on the Noss pathway. On Noss Road, over there, They were originally put in, there were pathways, disconnected pathways that were put in, and then the TSP pathway, the NOS pathway was put in. That was originally going to be 6 feet, for example. There's no swales, and those were reduced, due mostly to neighborhood concerns and actually people that already had homes. They weren't being redeveloped. So I think in a case like this, because of the proximity, you could narrow the swale. If you look at the swale, because we have, like I said, on NOS, we have very small swales, from the 8-foot standard to something smaller, and possibly make the pathway smaller to save those 3 trees. I've looked a lot at the TSP over the years, because there's been a lot of development in this part of, on Goodall, at least since 1994. So I don't know if that's an opposition, or maybe if tree remove is part of the variance, I'm just opposing it on that, and asking for a modification to that. I will state, if you look at some of the diagrams in this area, there's also a lot of very large trees on that lot. This is a pretty big project. Like I said, it's probably the largest, the contiguous lots make up about the largest development, that undeveloped piece of property in our neighborhood. So that's my comment on the tree removal.
Thank you. So just for the record, you're referring to tree 1167, 1172, and 1187?
Yes, I believe so. I was going to look at my phone, but those are probably the ones, the 3 along the right-of-way. In fact, in the list of 9 trees, it'll say right-of-way right on it. It gives a reason as to why they're being removed.
It's okay.
It's the cherry and the 31-inch fir and the 35-inch fir.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And this might also prevent having to put street trees there. I'm not aware of the mitigation for that, but I'm familiar with the swale, and if you have gone out to the site, I live there, so I would be a person testifying saying, yes, I visited it because I live there. The swales they're very large. If you look at them, they're very deep, and I think you can easily modify those to save those trees. That in combination possibly with the pathway, but the swales they're large. So that's what I guess I don't know if that's part of the major variance, but that's what I'm in opposition to.
I don't think it is part of the major variance.
I don't think it's part of the major variance, then I would say it's more of a comment and a request to look at that change in the plan.
Because the city obviously has changed for other areas. Why couldn't they do that for here?
So we don't have our engineering staff present tonight. I'll do my best. So there is an approved pathway design already within the Goodall right-of-way for the property to the north of this. And then there will be a pathway continuation on the property to the south. I do know that pathways cannot zigzag, and there are specific standards for how pathways are constructed in the city of Lake Oswego.
But obviously they were changed for the pathway on Noss Road.
I'm not familiar with this pathway on Noss Road. I know that the pathway has to be designed to meet ADA standards, that also has specific width requirements. And in reference to the stormwater treatment, the stormwater treatment does need to be able to treat all of the quality and quantity of stormwater created by the impervious surface. So I know that our city contract stormwater reviewer, Brown Caldwell, in Exhibit F12, does find that the proposed swales do meet the Lake Oswego Stormwater Manual requirements. I know that our city engineering staff has reviewed the proposal and that they have required the pathway width that they have required in order to meet their standards. So I cannot speak any further to ability to modify those standards. I'm not sure if there could be a modification that would continue to meet all of the ADA requirements and all of the standards that we have in place for pathways.
Just for the record, professional staff, can you identify by tree number the 3 trees you understand the
Yes.
witness to be talking about?
I believe that this is tree 1168.2, 1186, and 1187 is my belief.
The
Thank
3
you.
trees in the south.
Did you have another comment?
No. I think you understood my request, because I'm familiar, there's a standard, a boilerplate, and if you go in the TSP, I know that's how things are designed, and what I'm just saying is a modification to that. And there's a note actually in the TSP under it that talks about modifying it, for prevailing conditions. There's about 3 different reasons with the approval of the city engineer. So it would still have to meet all those requirements, but the idea is to modify it, to make it a little more narrow, to see if it's possible to save those trees.
Thank you. Any other questions for the witness? We appreciate you taking the time to stay this long and provide your input.
You're welcome. Thank you for serving.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, to that issue, if I may, the question on the tree removal, the question is whether it is a street tree, whether or not it triggers a requirement for alternative analysis. I think one of them does.
Yes, that is correct. Tree number 1168.2 is a street tree currently located in the public right-of-way. I will note that all 3 of these trees are looked at as significant trees in staff's analysis, regardless of whether or not they are street trees. And I suppose this is as good a time as any to note that 4 street trees are proposed. They're the circles with the dots in the middle in this view right here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. So there are street trees proposed regardless, and actually a lot of these green symbols, these are Douglas fir trees, is what these are all indicating, kind of also towards the front of the site. So I'll just point that out as well.
But wouldn't it be reasonable that those trees are going to come down when you build a house on those properties? They're not asking for that now, but look at the size of these trees, and that's the building site. So more trees are coming down too.
Potentially, we don't have a building footprint, a driveway location at this time. We have a potential driveway location.
But in all
That's a 2-step process, yes. When a partition is granted, you have to put in the partition improvements. Then we look at the tree removals. We don't look at where the house might go and, that sort of thing. And so then the second step is when they decide to put the house in. Then you get in the second
Yes, I
analysis as to what
understand that.
trees have to come out and what alternatives there. My point is that, all right, if all the 3 trees have to be looked at are significant trees that triggers the alternative analysis, then the question is whether or not there's an alternative site plan that could be done. I think the standard the gentleman is referring to is a city engineering standard, which could be looked at, not, I think, by this commission because it's in the judgment of the city engineer, but it would be looked at the time of when the partition plat is submitted and public improvements are looked at. So.
Yes, thank you. We have a gentleman sitting at the witness table. Are you here to testify?
Yes.
In favor or opposed or neutral?
Neither, just
Neutral.
more
Could you please
comments.
state your name and identify yourself?
My name is Chris Robinson. I live at 14,000 Goodall Road. Being here tonight brings back memories. I was neighborhood chair for East Highlands for 8 years, so I attended many meetings. I wanted to echo what Bill just said about, is there a way to preserve the trees along Goodall? Unfortunately, a lot have already been removed just north of the parcel we're talking about tonight, and they were significant trees. And so one thing that I just wanted to comment on is I think there could be better outreach by the city in terms of notice to neighbors that live in the neighborhood in the immediate area of this development. I do not recall receiving a letter or a notice. All I saw was the sign on the property, and I don't think that's adequate. I think a certified mailing saying this is what's going on, here's, a little more impactful than a sign on the street. The other is we've lived on Goodall since 2006, and so we've seen a lot of development in that period of time, And so I would ask, and I know this is not maybe in your ballpark, but we have city staff here, is there's an average of probably 10 car trips a day for every new home. And so Goodall, because of all the development, has become a very busy street. And the speed of the traffic has increased. And there are speed bumps on Noss Road. And maybe some of my neighbors wouldn't like this, but I think there need to be some way of slowing down the traffic. And it's young people, older people, all types. And I'm just afraid someone's going to get hurt because there is not a completed pathway system. A lot of the people in the neighborhood walk their dogs or kids walk into school. And I'm just afraid somebody just going out and getting their mail, that something bad might happen. The other is, I guess, just the mitigation plan. I hope it's robust because it's hard to replace a significant tree with a 2-inch, I won't call it a sapling, but comparatively kind of a sapling. And so in the future with additional development is, let's do what we can to preserve the significant trees, the CO2. I'm not a tree hugger, but we have definitely something going on with our climate. I think we need to do for the city as a whole is preserve as many of our trees as we can. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Robinson? Thank you very much for your comments, and thank you for your service as the neighborhood president.
Thank you.
Are there any other witnesses, either online or in person, who wish to testify in opposition or neutral to the application? Seeing none, we will invite the applicant to come back up for rebuttal, if any.
This is Ryan O'Brien again. I just wanted to mention that we did take down 9 trees along Goodall Road recently, and it's for sight distance because they've calculated this design speed for 37 miles an hour because of the slope coming down. So we had to take those trees down. There's nothing we can do about it. We don't have any problem with talking to the city engineer if he wants to do most of the modifications of the plan. In fact, we looked at the staff report. It looks like condition 5A requires us to talk to the city engineer, and there's a dedication of 16 feet, but that's negotiable with the engineer. So we'll talk to him and see if there's anything that we can be done. And that's, I think, all I have. You have something else to add with that?
Nope. The site distance was what our engineer was messaging me about as well. So I'm really glad we're all on that same page. We want to make sure it's the welfare and safety of people are upheld as well as.
So we want to keep as many trees as we can. Makes the site look good.
Well, we appreciate your willingness to explore that further if necessary. Are there any other questions of the applicant on rebuttal? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I want to know how you do that little program where things go back and forth and over.
Animation, I think it kind of helps keep an eye on exactly where I want you to keep an eye
Very,
on. So
very cool.
I try to put that in there for you guys.
Yeah, he's a geek, that's why he knows how to do it.
So really quickly, before
Been called
the
once.
applicant's team leaves, really quickly,
Oh,
I just want to address the comment about the lack of mailed notice. I want to reassure the commission that we invited the neighborhood association to multiple pre-apps and that they held 3 neighborhood meetings. And we did have mailed notices, certified mailed notices that were sent out for this particular application, the notice of public hearing, and also for the 2 partitions on either side of this site. So I just wanted to really quickly address that.
Those notices are sent out to people within how many feet of the project?
It's a minimum of 50 property owners within 300 feet of the site. If you don't hit 50 property owners, then, or 50 properties, I should say, then you go out by 10-foot increments until you do hit that minimum 50.
Because those are all big land.
And so there's also a sign posted on the site. So I just wanted to really quickly reassure the commission that we did follow all of the code regulations for notice of the public hearing.
Thank you for that additional information. City Attorney Boone, did you have any other comments before we go into deliberations?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Prior to closing the public hearing, any person may request an opportunity to present additional evidence. The request is made. The public hearing would be to either continue to date certain, not less than 7 days later, or the record remain open for at least 7 days after the hearing to enable additional written evidence or testimony to be submitted, and the commission would establish the period for any rebuttal or written evidence to be submitted. Is there any such request? Hearing none, unless waived by the applicant, the commission would allow the applicant 7 days after the record is closed, all of the parties to submit final written argument in support of the application, which that information would be considered part of the record, but would not include new evidence. Do you wish to submit final written argument?
Yeah, we don't consider any more information, no.
No, you do not. You may proceed to deliberation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, do you have any thoughts you want to volunteer at this point on the pending application? If not, did you?
I think it's well thought through and makes sense, and they keep a lot of the wetlands and the open space intact, so I see no problem with it. I think on the condition that we go back and talk about trying to save those trees, if the city can be more flexible on that.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Sure, I'll make a motion.
Dues?
To approve LU 230010 with conditions as listed in the staff report.
Does that include a direction to the applicant to engage in conversations with the city about potentially saving tree 1168.2?
If that can be done, yes.
Well, I'm going to be technical here.
What was it the applicant said they would like to talk about with the city?
Well, the applicant said they would, talk to about what the city engineer would require for the spacing, which I think is outside the purview of this commission. The conditions of approval are granted to either meet the criteria and standards or to mitigate the built environment. But these are standards by the city engineer that are really kind of outside the approval criteria. That's the way I see it. So the applicant has volunteered to do so. If the applicant didn't.
Yes, they did volunteer, didn't they?
They did, that's true. But if you attach that as a condition, and if they don't, I don't know what that does to the application. And
I see. We can't compel them to talk to the city about
I think you can urge them, and I think you can urge the city engineer, and that can be carried, to the engineering department through staff, but I wouldn't suggest that meets the criteria for conditions of approval under 500703.5.
And I'd like to follow up with that to just note that we don't know what the critical root zone system is for those 3 trees. We don't know how much they would be impacted, even if it was modified, the pathway and swell were modified. So it's unknown whether or not they could even be preserved with those modifications. So I think urging, Ellen Davis can work with the engineering department when the public improvement plans come in and take a look at that. But I think the question before you tonight is if the requested tree removal meets the type 2 tree removal criteria. And you heard what staff's recommendation was tonight.
So, as I understand it, we can recommend to the applicant that they follow through on their voluntary conversation with the city and explore that as appropriate.
The public improvement plans, there's those plan sets are submitted to the engineering department for review. And at that time, the applicant can work with engineering staff to see what's possible as far as modifications and tree preservation. But again, the request before you is to remove those 3 trees and proceed with the drainage, swell, and pathway as you see designed before you, because that is what the city engineer requested that the applicant incorporate into their design for these preliminary plans.
Is that acceptable for your motion?
Yes.
Thank you. Is there a second of the motion?
I'll second the motion.
Are there comments, questions, or discussions about the motion? Then let's proceed with the vote.
Arthur?
Yes.
Poinsett?
Yes.
Sangre?
Yes.
Dues?
Yes.
Bates?
Yes.
Leek?
Yes.
O'Connor?
Yes.
7-0.
Thank you. The motion passes, and I do appreciate your willingness to at least explore in good faith the possibility of that measure to possibly save the trees if they can be saved, the surrounding tree 1168.2.
Okay, we'll do that. Johanna's our witness. Thanks a lot. We appreciate
Thank you
your
for being
review.
here so
Tentative
late in the
decision,
evening.
written findings brought back on August 7th.
May I make a comment
Yes.
while you're getting ready? I was just going to comment, as this discussion was going on, it reminded me of at least 2 different times in the last year or two when this kind of an issue has come up. And what we have done before is dealt very precisely with the responsibilities of this commission and the authority of this commission, and separate that from a separate motion after the action by the commission on this. It might have been appropriate, might be appropriate now for us to have a motion saying we would like to direct to engineering or to planning or something a concern that was brought up. But that vote simply is a more formal expression from this commission of what we feel is an important issue, but not an issue that impacted on the primary responsibility, which is to approve or not approve a particular action. Isn't that correct, City Attorney?
Yes, the commission has done so. Typically, that is to send a communique to the city council.
That's all we're doing.
Right. Well, this was actually to engineering department,
Right.
which, you know, it's in the same floor as the planning department. So the staff has indicated they're going to do so. If you feel that it's necessary to do a motion to that effect, you know, that's up to you.
Yeah, I certainly don't tonight on this issue, but I was just reminded we have dealt with issues like this a couple of times in the last few years by a separate action after the formal
Yeah, I mean, an
decision.
example would be, I think, the bus barn decision where you wanted the city engineer to take a look at the parking, something along the street. So-
We haven't heard from him yet, but we're waiting, or her.
Well, the bus barn decision is, still before Luba.
And we are
Okay, so-
actually, I'll talk about this in the management update. We do have a work session scheduled for Erica Rooney, the city engineer, to come back and talk to you about that particular issue. So,
And I want to acknowledge I did know that. Thank you, Joanne.
yes.
Thank you for that. Good point of order.
Good idea, good point.
Yeah, I appreciated that. We, as mentioned, Planner Hastay's comment reminded me that we did have a work session at the beginning of this year. We hope to have a follow-up work session, which we've been challenged in trying to schedule, where as part of that, this city engineer Rooney will be here, and also Director Namanalu to give us some feedback on where our prior memos of recent months and years have gone, if anywhere, and what consideration, if any, they've been given. So that is yet to come this year in 2023, so we hope to see that. We now turn to the next order of business, which, as we start our new operational year as a commission, it is now time to elect a new chair and a new vice chair for the year ahead. You may recall at our June 21st meeting, our immediate past chair, Jeff Shearer, our vice chair, Kirk Smith, and Commissioner Tim Lyons all left the commission. And we have our new commissioners, which we welcome very much and look forward to working with. Tonight, we're going to elect a chair and vice chair for the following year. Earlier this month, to the returning commissioners, I did circulate a request that you provide me with any names of nominees for these positions. Also, we'll take nominees from the floor. So I thought we would start with the chair election and then go to vice chair. The nominations we have for chair so far are myself, but I would welcome nominations of anyone else. And it's my understanding we'll take a public vote on this. Is that correct? Yes.
I'm deferring to Mr. Boone, and he said yes.
Yes, you will.
Okay, thank you. So I'll open it up for nominations of chair for the next year.
I personally think if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and you should stay, and that's my 2 cents.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your endorsement.
Yeah, I think that we all recognize that Chair Arthur has done a very, very excellent job this year, and I think we would be remiss in not insisting that he be the chair for another year if he's willing to do so.
Here, here.
Well, thank you very much. I recognize there's room for improvement, and I need to continue to improve, but I thank you. Are there any other nominations for chair?
I move nomination be closed.
Is there a second?
A second.
Second. All in favor, we'll take a voice vote if that's appropriate. All in favor of closing the nomination, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I'll abstain. So we'll vote then on chair. Is there a motion on the chair?
I make a motion that we nominate Chair Arthur to continue to be chair for the next calendar year.
I second that motion.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? We'll take an oral vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And I will abstain. Well, thank you very much. I do mean it sincerely. I recognize there's room for improvement. Typically, I work all day before our meeting, so I'm sometimes tired when I come here, and I'm not as agile as I would like to be. But I have enjoyed very much the privilege of chairing the commission, and I thank you for your support. And we'll look forward to working with you in the year ahead. So thank you very much. We now have nominations for vice chair, and I've received 2 nominations, and I'll announce those in a moment, but also I'll accept nominations from the floor, as it were. So the people nominated are Commissioner Bruce Poinsett and Commissioner Helen Leake. Are there other names we wish to place in the nomination for vice chair for the year ahead? City Attorney Boone, do you have direction on how we vote on this? Do we just, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think you could, maybe the best thing to do would be take a straw poll, see who the majority is on that, and then move that person to be chair, and then have a total vote on that.
Be vice chair?
Yeah, I'm a vice chair, excuse me, but to break that, and the other way to do it is to have a motion and just for one person that either gets approved or defeated, then you move to the next person. So, but I think maybe a straw poll is probably best.
Would any of the candidates, Commissioner Leake or Commissioner Poinsett, wish to make a statement?
No.
Commissioner Leake.
Speech?
I feel actually Mr. Poinsett might be in better stead to be vice chair as he's had more experience here than I.
Well, I appreciate your service on the commission. Would you like to withdraw your name, or do you wish to proceed with the vote?
I think so. I would like to withdraw my name.
Well, very good. We do appreciate you on the commission, and we look forward to working with you. So that leaves us with one nominee. So I would then move that we elect Commissioner Bruce Poinsett as vice chair for the following year. Is there a second?
Second that motion.
Any discussion? Very good. Let's have an oral vote. All in favor of electing Bruce Poinsett as our vice chair for the following year indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, any abstentions?
You voted for yourself. Awesome.
Very good.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, Vice Chair Poinsett. We appreciate your service on the commission, and I look forward, as all of us do, working with you as vice chair. Thank you. So we will now move ahead with schedule review and management update. I did want to notice, if I can find my notes, which I may not be able to, that some members of our commission had volunteered to serve on the Urban and Community Forest Plan ad hoc committee. As I understand it, this plan, the Urban and Community Forest Plan, was adopted in 2007, and the City Council has established a goal of updating this plan. And some of our commissioners, let me see if I can find our names of our commissioners. Commissioner Sangri Commissioner Vice Chair Poinsett and Commissioner Dews have volunteered to serve on the Urban and Community Forest Plan Update Focus Group, as has our immediate past Vice Chair Kirk Smith. So we'll look forward to hearing from you all about that. Commissioner Hastings, what can you tell us about the management update and schedule review?
Manager, not commissioner, unfortunately. Yes, thank you. I just wanted to let everyone know that Jessica Numanalu was hired as the Community Development Director. So she was interim for the last 4.5, almost 5 months, and she was hired, and the 17th was her first day as the new director. So we are now looking to fill her position, not at the deputy community development level, but at the planning manager level. So that's the next change that will happen with staff. I also wanted to urge the commissioners to look through their old emails. I know I flooded you over the past couple of weeks, but the city manager's office did send out a survey, most importantly to kind of look at demographics for people serving on our boards and commissions. I'll resend that email tomorrow, but I don't think that they have a really high response rate on that. So if you could take a moment and just fill out a couple of questions. I don't think it's a long survey at all. I think a couple of minutes. And again, to specifically do that for our demographics, because they're very interested in tracking our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts at the city. So that's just a little plug for that. As far as upcoming hearings, we do have the next couple of hearings filled. We'll be returning on August 7th for findings for the 3 hearings tonight. Just a side note, thank you very much for your very efficient work tonight. That was a lot of information to digest, and I know it was pretty overwhelming, especially for our new commissioners, but I appreciate all of the effort there. So we'll be returning to adopt findings on the 7th. We also have another public hearing that night. It is for a DR permit for townhomes in the Old Town neighborhood, so just south on State Street there. We also do have a hearing scheduled for August 21st. That is to adopt findings for that DR permit from the 7th. And we have a tree appeal. There is a new single-family home going in on Bryant Road. Renaissance is the developer. They did request a number of trees to be removed, and we received an appeal notice of that last Friday. So that will be on the docket for the 21st. Excuse me, for September 6th, we would be adopting findings for that tree appeal. And that is when we tentatively have scheduled for Jessica Numanalu and Erica Rooney, the city engineer, to return and talk to you about those former memos that you sent out, policy urgings that you sent out for the bus line, or no, sorry, the bus barn. And then I can't share, do you remember what the other issues were that we were going to be talking about that night?
I did not bring a list of those,
Okay.
but
I
there
know
are
that
3
there
or
were some.
4 memoranda we've submitted over the recent months and years.
And Director Numanalu is tracking those, and she is ready to do it. There's just a lot of vacations and outages and new commissioners and all of that.
So I'm pleased we can do this when we have a new commission in place.
Yeah, so we have the next 3 meeting dates. We are meeting. So again, appreciate that, and especially over the summer vacations. And that's all I have, unless you have questions for me.
Well, thank you for that report. Commissioners, I do hope that we can have a social event sometime before the middle of September. And so I will contact you and work with staff on that. I think that's important for us. And often our meetings go a little late in the evening, so it's hard to schedule it after our meeting. But I'll be contacting you about that and look forward to it. Is there any other business we need to transact this evening? If not, without objection, we'll conclude the meeting. The meeting will adjourn, and thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.